That evening, the royal palace glowed with lights, preparing for a special event. A lavish banquet was being held in its halls, filled with elegantly dressed guests and conversation. The celebration was arranged in honor of a battle victory and to recognize the merits of Duke Vanderlick. Among those present, in a shimmering dress, appeared Clarissa Nocturnal. The guests were filled with excitement, watching the events unfold with interest. Duke Vanderlick appeared in the hall, causing universal delight and admiration. A boy in a ceremonial uniform approaches the banquet hall, drawing attention to himself. This turns out to be Lord Eric, young and a little flustered. Guests quietly discuss that the rumors of his appearance at the banquet turned out to be true. Many are amazed that he actually went to war at such a young age. At his gaze, some guests shyly step aside. A sinister reputation follows this noble family, lingering in every movement. Tales of a family where ruthlessness and cold determination were considered virtues made many tremble. People believed that no one who crossed the threshold of that family ever returned alive. Amidst these conversations, little Lord Theo entered the hall with shining innocence. The child's appearance at the banquet caused genuine surprise and confusion among the guests. Clarissa was embarrassed and alarmed by the boy's unexpected appearance. Little Theo fell to the floor and burst into tears, and a tense silence hung in the hall for a moment. The frightened guests imagine with horror the fate of the small child, unable to watch what is happening. The Duke, with his determined look, suddenly attracts all attention, holding a shining scepter in his hands. A surprised and bewildered exclamation rings out in the hall, causing a wave of shock among the guests. The boy's eyes fill with delight and amazement at what he sees before him. The younger brother unexpectedly finds himself in Eric's embrace, who looks at him with astonishment. Whispers begin among the guests. No one expected the Duke to have another child. Little Theodore Vanderlick beams with joy, reaching out to the woman he believes is his mother. Clarissa, stunned by the child's address, catches the surprised glances of the guests. Realizing the situation, she awkwardly recalls that she had already explained her role to him. Duke Vanderlick enters the hall, drawing all eyes to him and causing whispers among the invited guests. He calmly explains that the boy came to the ball only because he wanted to see Clarissa. Clarissa quickly decides it would be better to take Theodore to a separate room and wait there. Clarissa realizes that simply leaving with Theo won't work, and she gets worried. The Duke unexpectedly takes her hand and stares intently into her eyes amidst the blooming hall. Clarissa is overwhelmed by what is happening, lost amidst all the attention. With a smile, the Duke reminds her that she is now responsible not only for his heart, but also for the hearts of his sons. Eric firmly states that he and Theo will not let her go. Stunned, Clarissa can hardly believe what is happening and can barely comprehend the changes in her life. Clarissa found herself in the center of the Vanderlick family's strong embrace, surrounded by the attention of the Duke and his sons, unaware of the changes awaiting her. On that fateful day, amidst a bright sky and shady alleys, a new story begins. The children listen with delight as they are told about the happiness of the prince and princess. The children, full of energy, ask Lady Clarissa to read another book, but someone suggests playing hide and seek. Lady Clarissa, with a smile, reminds everyone to play without quarreling, agreeing to a new game. Suddenly, news arrives that the children's guardians have come for them, and surprise is reflected on the faces of everyone present. The children joyfully jump up, anticipating meeting their loved ones, a feeling of joy and impatience appearing in their hearts. The children happily meet their guardians amidst smiles and warm embraces. Adults with children walk around the yard, founded by a caring mother, remembering the past and the openness of this place for orphans. Here, a dream came true, so that fewer children would be left alone, and that's how the story began. Despite her love and care, the mother did not manage to complete her work, and now her daughter cherishes this dream, continuing to manage the orphanage. Even when the financial situation is difficult, she is not ready to give up her mother's wish. Having finished her duties for the day, the main character leaves with a touch of sadness. The heroine walks quietly along the alley, thinking that no one is waiting for her at home, and a slight sadness is reflected in her gaze. Suddenly, one of the maids informs Clarissa about the arrival of relatives, disturbing her solitude. Clarissa stops in surprise, trying to understand what is happening. At a lavish dining table in the living room, Count Nocturnal's family gathers, preparing for an important event. Count Nocturnal, Clarissa's uncle, joyfully announces her arrival in honor of her birthday. Annetta Nocturnal, Clarissa's cousin, expresses her long-awaited joy at meeting her sister. Clarissa's aunt, with a slight chuckle, notes her dedication to the orphanage, inviting her to the table. Clarissa is surprised, remembering that today is her birthday. Looking at her reflection in the plate, Clarissa realizes how little this holiday means to her. She notices that only today her relatives decided to gather together, although they had never dined with her before. After her mother's death, her uncle's family moved into the estate, under the guise of care, taking over the main place in the house. Since then, her relatives began to act as if Clarissa didn't exist at all. The Count announces that a very important guest, the royal envoy, has arrived at their house today. The royal envoy apologizes for the sudden intrusion, inspiring respect with his appearance. Clarissa is surprised, realizing that before her stands a representative of the king himself. The guest announces that he has come to read the will of the late Countess Nocturnal. The will states that all family property is to pass to Clarissa as the rightful heir. The girl is shocked to learn that the inheritance includes an entire city and the adjacent mines, not understanding why everything has changed so suddenly. The royal messenger explains that only as of today has Clarissa reached adulthood, and now she has every right to inherit the property. Clarissa hopefully thinks that thanks to the inheritance, she will be able to save the orphanage and bring it back to life. The girl understands that she will be able to preserve her mother's dream and give children protection and happiness. However, her uncle confidently states that he will manage the entire inheritance, citing his past experience. Clarissa objects, reminding him that this property belonged to her mother, and now it should pass to her. The messenger clarifies that in order for Clarissa to receive the inheritance, she must officially accept it and provide proof. The messenger explains that to transfer the inheritance to the palace, a sign of acceptance is required, which is usually a magic stone. Most likely, the Countess chose a family heirloom stone as proof. Clarissa's uncle states in bewilderment that no one in the family was aware of a family stone. Clarissa discreetly confirms that her mother entrusted the stone to her, and she has it. Lowering her gaze, Clarissa tries to find the family heirloom, but feels confused. The girl realizes with horror that the stone is gone and cannot understand how it happened. The man stands sternly over the girl, accusing her of losing something important, and she, in despair, makes excuses, falling to her knees. His reproachful look shows disappointment because the girl couldn't even cope with one task. She feels worthless, as always. The man orders her to immediately find the missing item, reminding her that the fate of the orphanage depends on it, and threatens her with consequences. With a cunning smile, he promises not to touch the orphanage if she signs something important. The girl understands that for him, the orphanage and its inhabitants are not even worth a couple of coins, and despair overwhelms her. She always knew how dark and hostile those around her could be, their malicious gazes seemingly piercing through space. But for a brief moment, hope was born in her heart, though the pain never leaves her eyes. Bowing, the girl admits her mistake and decides to take responsibility for the missing family stone, promising to find it. Smiling, she swears that if anything happens to the children while she's away, she'll never return to this house. Shock and bewilderment flash across the man and woman's faces as they hear the reproach about the insane jewelry bills. The woman, with a displeased look, wonders if she can go home, as the conversation unexpectedly touches upon the money spent on her trinkets. Tension and fear build in the room as the girl in red trembles, and anger accumulates within her. Under the cover of night, a girl in a cloak arrives at Duke Vanderlick's estate, preparing for a difficult conversation. Learning that the magic stone now belongs to Duke Vanderlick, the girl in red is shocked and cannot believe what she has heard. With cold determination, she reflects on Annette's betrayal for petty gain, confirming her suspicions. Looking up at the luxurious house, the heroine mentally calls Duke Vanderlick's name, realizing the upcoming meeting. Standing at the majestic doors, she realizes that getting anything back from this ruthless Duke is almost impossible, but inwardly, she is not going to back down. With determination in her eyes, the girl prepares to fulfill her promise and reclaim what was lost. The man regretfully reports that the magic stone could not be recovered, as expected. The conversation takes an unpleasant turn, and the interlocutors are asked to leave the room, despite attempts to discuss what happened. The girl inwardly admits that she anticipated difficulties with returning the stone and decides to look for another way. She notices a strange silence. The absence of servants in the manor arouses her suspicions. The girl flinches when she hears an unexpected scream. A sense of ominous magical energy appears, and she realizes that something dangerous has begun to happen. The Vanderlick family stops at nothing, even using children for their victory. In a hurry, the heroine rushes forward, trying to stop someone from an undesirable step. She finds herself in a mysterious room filled with a suspicious atmosphere. A baby cries on the bed, its despair echoing through the dark room. A family magic stone unexpectedly appears on the floor, and the question arises as to why it's here. Suddenly, someone attacks the heroine, demanding an explanation for her presence. The heroine feels anxiety and a chill down her spine, noticing a sword nearby. It dawns on her that what's happening might be connected to someone very dangerous. A thought strikes her that the man before her might be the master of the estate, the infamous Duke himself. She turns around in astonishment, trying to understand what is happening. At this moment, a mysterious object adorned with blue stones and a ribbon appears in plain sight. It turns out this object is just a child's rattle, which surprises the heroine. The man notices that the baby has suddenly stopped crying, and he warily pays attention to it. His gaze becomes insistent. He demands to know who was in the room. The girl, gathering her courage, states her name, introducing herself as Clarissa Nocturnal. The young man clarifies that he felt a powerful magical surge that led him here. Clarissa, confused and shocked, hears the question of how she managed to stop the baby's crying. She herself is surprised by this and recalls her unexpected gesture of care when she took the infant's hand. The man suggests that the baby might have rocked himself to sleep and then invites the heroine for a serious conversation. The girl quickly agrees and hastily follows him, surprised by what is happening. She looks around and suddenly wonders where the ominous magical energy she felt earlier has disappeared to. During their conversation, the man unexpectedly reveals that the child is his son, which surprises the heroine. She recalls that, according to rumors, Duke Wanderlick was supposed to be single, and now she is surprised by the inconsistencies. Despite the unsettling conversations about the Duke, the heroine doesn't believe the terrible rumors, trying to understand what's happening on her own. The girl anxiously squeezes her hand, suspecting that if the Duke is indeed going to use the child, it could be dangerous. A sudden tension arises between her and the Duke as the situation becomes fraught. Another man appears in the room, alarm rises around the pram, and those present are left guessing. The baby, wiping away tears, looks at the rattle in the outstretched hand. The rattle unexpectedly flies and hits the Duke right in the head. The baby cries even louder, and the girl notes with surprise that the little one does not trust his father at all. The girl suggests that the Duke hold the baby, hoping it will help. The Duke hesitantly takes the child, but the baby immediately starts crying even louder. Next to him, a girl supports the baby, and an unexpected warmth appears between all three of them. Her hand soothingly touches the child's palm, and the atmosphere becomes more harmonious. A flustered but content expression appears on the Duke's face as the child holds him tightly. However, the baby still continues to cry, and the girl, puzzled, tries to understand how to finally calm the child. The girl anxiously realizes that she feels the same cursed energy as before. She cautiously scans the hall, trying to understand where this energy is coming from. A sudden realization and doubt flicker in her eyes as she begins to guess the reason. Before her astonished gaze is a crying infant, from whom, it turns out, all this magic emanates. Off-screen, it is explained that magic is a power one is born with, and if it runs out, severe consequences may follow. A woman desperately calls out to someone by their title, warning that if things continue, the child could be in danger. A man with a baby in his arms asks a girl to try to calm him down again. He explains that the baby releases magic when he cries, and recalls that the girl used to be able to soothe him. The girl hesitantly asks not to hand her the baby that way, feeling a slight anxiety. In her thoughts, an alarm rings. Such powerful magic is dangerous if released constantly. She feels she has few special abilities, but decides to at least try to relieve the child's anxiety. In her warm hands, the baby finally calms down, and light fills the entire scene. The man notes with surprise that the girl's method actually turned out to be effective. He informs her that the child has about 3 months left to live, causing the girl to become agitated. The child sleeps peacefully in her arms, and the man acknowledges that the girl has a special gift for calming him. The man entrusts the girl with caring for the baby for these 3 months. He confidently states that during this time, he will find a way to save the child, and the girl is shocked by what she hears. Then he recalls their previous conversation and clarifies that she came to return that very magic stone. The heroine resolutely offers the magic stone as payment. The magic stone was originally bought to help baby Theo. She understands the reason for what is happening, and she begins to realize that nothing is accidental. She is promised not only payment with the stone, but also an additional salary according to the terms of her work. She realizes that if she can calm the baby, he will have a chance to survive. A determination is born in her soul not to abandon the child and not to let him die. The girl bows her head in agreement, accepting the conditions placed before her. With a slight smile, she announces that she agrees to the contract, holding a child in her arms. Turning to the man, she puts forward another condition: to help her mother's orphanage. She asks him to protect the orphanage and all the children living there, using his power. With downcast eyes, she repeats her request, emphasizing its importance. The man calmly confirms his agreement, assuring her of his support. The silver-haired girl smiles shyly and thanks her interlocutor, her blue eyes shining with sincere joy. The man in the dress uniform is about to sign the document, but he is interrupted by another nobleman who addresses him with an official message. The blonde whispers to his friend that this is a great opportunity for him to marry the girl and make her a duchess. The man reacts sharply to what he hears, stating that such a thought is absurd and not open for discussion, which greatly surprises the girl. Embarrassed and caught off guard, the girl awkwardly makes excuses, admitting that she is not thinking about such things at all right now. A small child with a radiant smile reaches out to his mother, filling those around them with warmth and genuine joy. Complete astonishment fills the room as the blonde man and the Duke look in confusion at the stunned girl. With wide eyes and a trembling voice, the girl repeats the word that unexpectedly sounded to her, trying to comprehend what had happened. The baby, with a joyful smile, reaches out his hands and unexpectedly calls the woman Mama. The woman, in astonishment and shock, unable to believe her ears, freezes with her mouth open. In the living room, one of the guests laughs, noting the baby's talkativeness, while another is surprised to hear such a thing for the first time. The woman, trying to calm herself, thinks that babies often babble all sorts of things, and perhaps it means nothing. A man in a black uniform, with a serious and even frightening face, suspects the words are an insinuation about his son's foolishness. A young man, with a serious expression and a slight bow, asks the woman on the sofa if she used healing magic on Lord Theodore. Remembering Lord Theodore's mother, it becomes clear that she possessed healing magic, and this could have been the cause of the confusion. The woman with silver hair admitted that she herself did not know how to use magic. The black-haired man reasons that a person without knowledge, even of basic magic, is unable to master complex spells, and is surprised that the woman cannot use magic. In the corridor, the man announces that this is Lord Theo's room. He explains that the boy's nanny fell ill under the influence of his magic, and it will take time for her to recover. Before the nanny's illness, Lord Theo was cared for by the Duke, who is resistant to magic. The young man realizes that Lady Clarissa is also unaffected by Lord Theo's magic. Clarissa, thoughtfully, notes that the small number of staff in the castle is precisely due to Lord Theo's magic. She hopefully thinks that people are starting to return and decides to take better care of Lord Theo. Remembering her duties, she takes a pen and decides to write a letter to the children of the orphanage. Clarissa writes a letter, apologizing to the children for her sudden departure. She assures them in the letter that there's no need to worry about the orphanage, as His Grace promised to protect everyone. A warm smile appears on Clarissa's face as she recalls the children's shock at seeing real soldiers. At this moment, little Theo wakes up, sleepy and confused. Clarissa carefully prepares to get clean clothes for the baby. Lord Theo watches Clarissa leave intently, trying to understand something. When Clarissa returns, she apologizes for making him wait. Standing with the baby in his arms, the boy with a wary look wonders who is in front of him. The boy with a stern look holds the little girl tightly in his arms, their eyes meeting for a moment. He rushes to the balcony, quickly running away, and behind him, a cry of alarm and a question about Lord Theo are heard. Magic flares up. A boy with a girl in his arms soars into the air. Astonished servants watch. Suddenly, the spell loses its power. The frightened boy with the baby begins to fall. A woman with silver hair rushes to the railing in horror, sensing danger. She realizes with relief that she managed to catch the children at the last moment. Reaching out, the boy tries to hold on, urging himself not to give up. The woman stumbles. Fear engulfs her, but she tries not to fall. In a whirlwind of light and flying leaves, she holds the boy's hand, feeling relieved. The boy, with a trembling hand, is surprised by the magic's disappearance, and the woman worries about his condition. She asks if he got hurt, and the boy, slightly embarrassed, replies that he's fine. The woman sighs with relief, but a lingering anxiety about what happened remains in her heart. The girl seriously instructs Eric, forbidding him from doing dangerous things. The baby is crying loudly, and the boy, bewildered, holds him in his arms. The girl, surprised, watches as Eric struggles to calm the baby. She gently introduces herself as a nanny, reaching out her hands to the child. Eric anxiously hugs the crying baby, feeling helpless. In the boy's thoughts, there's regret about past nannies, as the baby only got worse. The girl, in confusion, realizes that the boy just wanted to protect the child. A worried man rushes towards them, calling both of them by name. The man explains that he came because of the loud noise and is glad that everyone is safe, although he was scared. The girl hurries to reassure him that they are all right, despite the awkwardness of the situation. At this moment, blood unexpectedly pours from her hand, causing her confusion. Eric watches anxiously and reassures her that the wound will heal on its own. The girl recalls her experience with children from the orphanage and is calm about scratches, but she is corrected that the wound is serious. Eric is agitated because even small wounds can be dangerous, and he fears for the girl's life. The young nobleman picks up the baby, watching what's happening with surprise. The girl explains how to give first aid, clean the wound, and stop the bleeding. She suddenly notices that her wound is healing from a magical glow. It becomes clear that the child inherited the ability for healing magic from their mother. The girl adores Eric, and he responds to her shyly. She is amazed by his talent for magic, and the boy admits that he can only cast a simple spell and doesn't compare himself to his mother. The embarrassed boy runs away, and the girl watches him go. The girl notices how the nobleman hasn't expressed his feelings so openly in a long time, wondering if he is Lord Theo's brother. The man is embarrassed that he arrived earlier than expected and didn't have time to explain everything. The girl concludes that he loves his younger brother very much, and the man confirms this. Her thoughts note that Lord Eric is especially attentive to his relatives. The girl stands by the window with the baby in her arms, bathed in the rays of daylight. She hopes to befriend the other boy, too, even though she knows it will be difficult. The boy watches her intently during all the household chores of changing and bathing the baby. She decides not to talk to the boy, so he doesn't run away, and focuses on her tasks, leading Theodore to dinner. The girl explains that tonight's dinner is carrots, and brings the spoon to the baby. Unexpectedly, the older boy tries the food first, shocking everyone. The girl is surprised, and the boy replies that he's just checking the taste. He claims his actions have nothing to do with trust, continuing to chew. Admitting the food is tasty, the boy still remains wary. He accuses the girl of trying to steal his food, suspecting her of everything. The girl is alarmed when the boy runs off, demanding an explanation. Left alone, she wonders if she really seems that suspicious. Several days pass, and the atmosphere in the castle changes. Eric resolutely decides to protect Theo, convinced that the girl is hiding something. He is determined to shield Theo from everyone, even from the Duke himself. At this time, the girl overhears or notices an intimate moment between other adults. The boy angrily demands that someone immediately leave His Grace's presence. His gaze turns furious as he accuses the other of trying to manipulate the Duke's sympathy. Eric rushes in, asserting that while the Duke might be deceived, he himself never would be. The moment is filled with flashes of magic, until someone's hand firmly clasps another's palm. The man stops the boy, warning him not to use magic so carelessly. The frightened boy starts to make excuses, trembling with agitation. The woman, observing the situation from the side, notices with surprise that a mistake has occurred. The embarrassed maid explains that the Duke simply came to inquire about the well-being of Lord Theo, who is currently taking a bath. She recounts that hot water accidentally splashed on the child, causing him to cry. She tried to wipe the wet Duke to comfort him. The man advises against jumping to conclusions and assures her that even if the maid had tried to manipulate him, he wouldn't have fallen for it. The woman awkwardly remarks that she had no such thoughts and isn't thinking about such things at all right now. The girl smiles shyly, feeling that she has been misunderstood and that she should be more careful now. The man states reservedly that he has no intention of ever getting married. Eric is surprised and quietly agrees with what he heard. The man notes the boy's attempts to protect Theo, but asks him not to worry about other matters anymore. The boy, with his head down, quietly apologizes, feeling a sense of shame for what is happening. The man goes to change, leaving the household chores to the woman, and she agrees. The girl feels awkward about the situation. Eric, apologizing for his strange words, is also about to leave. He notices that Lord Theo is still in the bathroom and admits that it's difficult for him to handle him alone. The girl with a smile offers to help the boy if he wants. Eric is a little embarrassed, but eventually agrees. Under the girl's supervision, the boy begins to help wipe Theo after his bath, trying to be careful. The boy carefully wipes the baby after his bath, noting his cleanliness and freshness. The child is beaming with happiness in new clothes, smiling broadly and looking joyful. The woman notices that Theo becomes especially happy when his older brother takes care of him. She says that the younger brother cried when the Duke tried to take care of him himself because the water was too hot. The boy hugs the baby tightly, as if protecting him from all worries. The woman says she runs an orphanage, which surprises the boy. The boy, surprised, asks again about the orphanage, and the woman explains that she takes care of children without parents. Smiling children are shown, who are growing up without parents, or with only one parent. The boy thoughtfully hugs his brother, gently kissing him on the forehead. Talking to the woman, he begins to realize that he and his brother are also like children from an orphanage. The woman confirms his guess, and the boy ponders his fate. Suddenly, the girl is surprised, as if a new important understanding has dawned on her. A proud feeling of superiority arises in the boy's thoughts, because they are the Duke's children, and the woman awkwardly apologizes. He falls silent, and the woman cautiously asks if everything is all right. Eric carefully asks how far away the orphanage is, which unexpectedly piques his companion's interest. The woman explains that one has to travel by carriage to the orphanage, as it is located on her family's lands. He muses that he would like to go there someday, if he receives permission from His Grace. The woman is amazed by the boy's words. Her eyes fill with warmth and surprise. She enthusiastically invites the boy to the shelter, assuring him that he will be welcome there. He hastily tries to justify himself, noting that supporting such places is the duty of any nobleman. Blushing with embarrassment, the boy hurries away, and the woman watches him with a kind smile. The woman thinks with relief that she was glad to get along with Lord Eric, despite her doubts. A few days later, the woman reappears within the palace walls. On the way, she thinks that Lord Theo was in an excellent mood today and anticipates a successful report. The woman appears behind the balcony railing, interrupting what is happening with a loud shout, and the man and boy turn their attention to her. The man, growing angry, demands attention to his words. He accuses the boy of weakness, stating that he is unworthy of the inheritance if he cannot hold a sword, and the boy sadly lowers his gaze. The enraged man reproaches the youth, accusing him of lacking the pride of an heir. The boy's eyes fill with fear and anxiety after the threat of losing loved ones. Barely holding back his emotions, the young man begins to tremble, replaying what he heard in his head. Suddenly, the guide jumps up and quickly runs out of the room. The young woman leans on the table and watches what is happening with anxiety. A man in uniform enters, speaking coldly to the worried woman. The woman starts to make excuses, talking about Lord Eric's fencing lessons and his tutor. The man, with an icy gaze, places the responsibility for Theodore on her. He sharply forbids her from interfering in matters concerning Eric. The woman apologizes fearfully, sensing his displeasure. The man leads the woman away, promising to listen to her in his study. The woman is left alone, tormented by worry for Lord Eric's fate. The young man says he heard the news from Lady Clarissa, advising to be more careful with expressing his thoughts. In his mind, he rephrases the Duke's harsh statement, showing how it could have been said more gently. He notices that Lady Clarissa did not like the instructor's behavior and reminds his interlocutor about it. The Duke admits that he finds it difficult to adjust to life outside the battlefield, especially when dealing with women. The other interlocutor expresses understanding of the Duke's feelings, but urges him not to turn a blind eye to what is happening, receiving a concise reply. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to a folder with a report on the fulfillment of duties, which is handed to him. He notes with surprise how detailed and accurate the report is in recording all important events and changes. Reviewing the documents, he is amazed by the clear progress and reduction in negative indicators. The conviction arises in his mind that the mysterious woman can indeed break the ducal family curse. The Duke, maintaining seriousness, advises not to jump to conclusions. Meanwhile, the woman, with slight anxiety, asks if everything is all right with Lord Eric. She admits she can't shake her worry for Eric, but decides to focus on studying magic for Lord Theo. The girl unexpectedly stumbles upon a pile of books, freezing in surprise in the library. The boy, looking wary, hides behind a book, noticing her approach. She is surprised to find that Eric is studying healing magic and medical books on his own. Genuine joy and admiration for such a thirst for knowledge appear on her face. The girl admits that she also tried to study in secret, but couldn't become as smart as he is. The boy, hearing her revelation, freezes in slight embarrassment. In Eric's head, a feeling of closeness is born. It turns out they are so similar to each other. The girl notes with relief that she was worried about his condition, but now she sees that he is fine. She timidly asks to sit next to him to talk, causing the boy to become embarrassed. Eric, embarrassed, runs away, and the girl, with a smile, remarks that he ran away again. Later, an acquaintance, a young man, asks in surprise why Eric is learning everything by himself and doesn't have a teacher. The girl explains that healing magic and medicine are not essential for a future duke, which is why Eric doesn't have a mentor. The silver-haired girl muses that focusing solely on swordsmanship might harm the boy. The young man says that the boy has hated swords ever since his parents died, and even the Duke is worried. The girl is surprised by the news about the boy's parents. She clearly didn't know about their fate. An image of two orphaned children against a backdrop of tragedy appears before her eyes. Their parents have fallen, and the siblings are left alone. Her thoughts confirm the truth. These children are indeed adopted. The dark-haired boy is trembling, barely holding on to his sword, his gaze filled with fear. Under the supervision of an adult man, the boy drops his sword, unable to withstand the tension. The mentor angrily scolds the boy for another failure and curses because of the notebook he brought. The bewildered boy asks for his exercise book back, which he accidentally brought to training. In a loud voice, the mentor calls him a weakling. The boy's mind is suddenly filled with the desire to get rid of the hateful notebook right now. The woman with silver hair sternly stops what's happening with a single word. With a firm gaze, she decides to strip the person who treats a student like that of their right to teach. The girl with silver hair, with a determined look, calls someone a servant, causing surprise and irritation among her interlocutors. A man with a thick beard and a blue doublet fiercely declares his status as Lord Eric's instructor. A girl, kneeling with a book in her hands, asks if her interlocutor understands what's written, but receives an uncertain answer. Examining the notes in the book, the girl muses that Lord Eric is a genius child, possessing even healing magic, the most difficult of all. She notes that difficulties only arise due to Eric's young age. The girl, smiling, states that helping a child is the duty of adults. The man, in despair, shouts, suspecting a hint at the shortcomings of his mentorship. The girl calmly says that raising one's voice and not understanding the situation is incompetent, standing next to the boy and the man. The enraged man raises his hand, intending to hit the girl. To her surprise, the girl feels no pain and looks up in astonishment. The man's fierce hand is abruptly stopped by another, stronger hand. A young man with a piercing gaze appears before her eyes, and the girl, surprised, recognizes him as the Duke. The young man with red eyes confidently declares that he personally hired this woman as a nanny for Theodore. The instructor, head bowed dejectedly, apologizes, acknowledging her status as Lord Theodore's nanny. The Duke glares sternly, pointing out that this only makes the woman's transgression more outrageous. The silver-haired girl, embarrassed and guilty, asks the Duke for forgiveness. The little boy anxiously explains that the woman only wanted to help, but he is interrupted. The Duke announces that no one has the right to offend someone who belongs to him, and dismisses the instructor from his post. The instructor, bewildered, begins to beg for mercy, but a sword is already at his throat. The Duke calmly lists that he committed 2 transgressions. Firstly, the instructor attacked an unarmed woman, even though he is a knight. And secondly, he insulted the Duke's house. Next, his machinations are revealed. The instructor spread false rumors about the Duke's brother and embezzled money allocated for Eric's education. The Duke confirms that the woman was right. This man is not fit to be a teacher. The instructor is horrified to hear the decision that he is fired. The Duke announces that from now on, he will personally oversee the boy's education. A flustered Eric blushes, surprised by such unexpected attention. The Duke admits he was too preoccupied with Theo and promises not to forget about others again. The man, with downcast eyes, apologizes to the young woman, which confuses her. He confesses that he realized his mistake thanks to her words. The girl wonders if the Duke started acting after hearing her advice. The Duke's confession surprises and delights the girl. He really did listen to her. From then on, the Duke personally begins to teach little Eric fencing and other sciences, and the former instructor hastily leaves the mansion with his belongings over his shoulder. Later, the girl tells her interlocutor how surprised she was that the Duke himself apologized. The new status brings the Duke many worries, because before, his whole life was spent on the battlefield, and now he is overwhelmed with duties. The blonde man kindly confirms that the Duke highly appreciates all the woman's efforts for Theo and expresses his gratitude to her himself. Clarissa, a little flustered, begins to speak, but cannot immediately find the right words. She inwardly admits that she hadn't expected how pleasant it would be to feel needed and useful to someone again after so many years of loneliness. The interlocutor warmly bids Clarissa farewell, leaving to attend to his own matters. A grateful and happy smile blossoms on her face. Suddenly, Clarissa cries out in astonishment, encountering something unexpected near the stroller. A young man in an exquisite suit is tense and says that he was called on an urgent matter, but he still doesn't understand what's happening. 2 men enter a luxurious flower garden, where a woman with a child is sitting amidst the flower beds, and one of them wonders what's going on. A woman with silver hair leans towards a baby who seems about to cry, pink petals swirling around them. A woman with a frightened face hastily reports the seriousness of the situation, her eyes wide with agitation. The black-haired man is surprised by his companion's reaction. Next to him, the second man throws up his hands. The man sighs heavily and asks for a detailed explanation, trying to understand the circumstances. The Duke clarifies whether a child named Theo is indeed responsible for the blooming garden and receives confirmation. The second man explains that such rapid blooming likely involved life energy magic, which is almost impossible for young children. The Duke is interested if the child can repeat the miracle again. The woman is not sure, but does not deny such a possibility. The woman muses that the magic worked when Theo smiled, and suggests that if they can make him smile again, the effect will be repeated. The baby with a wreath of flowers on his head looks scared and distrustful, clinging to the woman. The woman holds the baby in her arms, and he starts crying loudly in fear, while the blonde man laughingly remarks that Theo is still afraid of the Duke. The silver-haired girl turns with surprise and a plea, inviting the Duke to smile. She explains that Teo's adoptive father will be much more effective for the baby than a simple nanny. The Duke tries to smile, his face looking strained and tense. The woman desperately holds the crying baby in her arms and is surprised by the Duke's fierce gaze, and the baby starts crying even harder. The blonde young man smilingly remarks that the Duke is indeed very serious, and he has never seen him smile. The silver-haired heroine asks again in shock, while the Duke is clearly embarrassed and smiles awkwardly. The girl walks away with the baby, asking permission to take matters into her own hands. She takes the Duke's face in her hands, demonstrating how to smile properly. She gently squints her eyes so that her smile looks kinder. A joyful, contented smile lights up the girl's face. She considers the result perfect. The Duke looks at the girl in confusion, surprised that she isn't afraid of him. The girl suddenly realizes she is too close to him, gets embarrassed, and apologizes. The baby, adorned with a wreath of flowers, smiles joyfully, beaming with happiness. The girl with silver hair looks at the Duke in surprise and shares her discovery with him. She explains that the child was delighted when the Duke smiled. She holds the baby tightly, filling the scene with tenderness and care. From the side, among the bright flowers, one can see the Duke observing this touching scene. Later, the girl talks at the table and learns the latest details about Theo's magic. It turns out that when Teo cries, he involuntarily releases magical energy, and when he smiles, he absorbs it, which affects the flowers around him. The boy with a serious face summarizes that Teo is actually in danger. The girl is surprised by his quick wit, as he grasped the essence from a single explanation. The boy points out that mana is life energy, which is very important for understanding what is happening. He explains that magic, which consumes life energy, can only be used by those who have an excess of it. If such magic is used too often, life force will run out, and the person will die. Whereas for Teo, magic works unconsciously when he laughs or cries. For an infant with still unstable magical power, such manifestations are extremely dangerous, and the two hold hands, realizing the seriousness of this fact. The girl enthusiastically admires the genius of the young lord, who has figured out the situation. Lord Eric runs out of the room, angrily demanding an end to the familiarity, and the girl watches him in surprise. Once in the corridor, he indignantly wonders if this nanny is behaving too intimately. Internally, he's annoyed, because the girl's conversations always revolve around Theo and the Duke, as if they are the happiest things in her life. Hearing the voice, the boy tenses, wondering what His Grace could be doing in Theo's room. Before him, a scene unfolds. A woman with a baby in her arms smiles warmly at the Duke in the magical light of sunset. Lord Eric secretly watches the scene through the door, overwhelmed by mixed feelings. Unable to bear it, he runs down the corridor, away from what he saw, leaving his own doubts and emotions behind. The boy, lost in thought, sits in a luxurious armchair with a baby in his arms, immersed in silence and anticipation. He suddenly jumps up, alarmed by a shout and the unexpected situation. In a panic, the boy tries to comfort the baby, who has gotten dirty and started crying. The woman smiles and assures him that everything is fine, promising to bring a change of clothes. The boy, looking away, says that he needs to go to sword practice. The woman agrees and tells him to be more careful. The boy quickly leaves, and the woman stays with the baby, watching him. She anxiously wonders if something bad has happened, as the boy always looks exhausted after training with the Duke. Her eyes reflect worry and hope that the boy is all right. The woman ascends the stairs, letting him know she is near and ready to help. She watches the boy with concern, unable to stop thinking about him. The boy stands with a sword opposite a serious man, preparing for the upcoming training. The woman feels relieved, realizing she had worried herself for nothing. On the stairs, she decides to discreetly turn back so no one sees her. And downstairs, a demand to use a real sword is heard. The boy receives a real sword, and this causes him anxiety. His gaze becomes frightened, and panic grips his heart. A terrifying scene appears before his eyes, with two lifeless bodies on the floor. His body begins to tremble, fear paralyzing every movement. The woman, noticing the boy's distress, cries out his name in alarm. She hurries to the man on the stairs, eager to find out what happened and if he was hurt. Under the man's pressure, she admits that she was worried about Lord Eric, even though she was told not to interfere. She desperately searches for an excuse, claiming that caring for the boy is part of her duties, and the situation requires attention. The man recalls that the boy was reprimanded for failing during training with a real sword. The man's gaze becomes more serious, as he says that he advised not to force himself to do something he wasn't ready for yet. The boy's eyes are full of anxiety when the mentor talks about the next trial. Eric apologizes timidly, feeling guilty and trembling with fear. The man compassionately reminds the boy that he doesn't have to be the one who wields the sword. Harsh words surface in his memory, stating that the inability to wield a sword means unworthiness to be an heir. Through tears, the boy desperately pleads for another chance to prove himself. Filled with determination, he reaches out his hand towards the sword lying there. The woman rushes to the boy to support him in this difficult moment. She squeezes his hands tightly, trying to convey confidence and care to him. In her voice, there is a question about whether they plan to abandon the boy, though deep down, she hopes for the opposite. The woman notes that she still knows little about this man, but observes how the Duke always supports Lord Tio. The man replies in surprise that he has no intention of abandoning the boy at all. Eric, kneeling, says he agreed to become an adopted son for peace of mind after a family loss, and painfully asks if that was the goal. The young man turns around in surprise, clearly astonished by what is happening. He admits that the person he is talking to reminds him of his older brother. Before those gathered, he begins to say that he did not expect him to be skilled in fencing at all. The young man smiles as he recalls how someone could barely hold even a ceremonial sword. He admits that his brother was an excellent ruler, but completely lacked any talent for swordsmanship. The hero recounts that this is why he himself honed his skills and fought on the battlefield in his brother's stead. A happy family flashes through his memories, and he thinks that if he could die for his brother and the ducal house, he would consider it a worthy end. In his thoughts, an understanding emerges that this person also couldn't imagine loneliness, just like himself. A woman with a sad face reminds him that whoever has lost loved ones always feels this pain. The young man asks the woman if she hates him, and she is surprised by these words. He explains that he remembers his parents, and it's hard for him, so he thinks it would have been easier to raise Theo and make him the heir instead of himself. The woman is shocked by such a thought, and declares that she cannot believe in such selfishness. He is accused of being completely unable to raise children, because even a glance can bring Theo to tears. The woman, holding the boy's hands tightly, admits that now he is also worried next to her, not believing that he will cope. The man draws attention to a boy named Eric, which frightens him a little. The man gently advises Eric to focus on magic, as he has a talent for it. He assures Eric that he has Theo, and brothers are meant to support each other. Eric bursts into tears of happiness, feeling warmth and comfort. Two boys happily play together, one of them holding a funny toy. The woman notes with relief that the boy looks much happier and remembers Lady Clarissa. Clarissa asks what might please Theo as a birthday gift, and the boy is surprised. The woman suddenly remembers that Theo's birthday is very soon, next week. Clarissa is stunned, trying to grasp the suddenness of the upcoming event, and the little one, with wide eyes, repeats the word weak. The woman is worried that Theo might be weak in fencing, but the young man calmly assures her that he will support the boy. He adds that as long as he is around, nothing terrible will probably happen. In a bright room, a woman asks about a celebration in someone's honor, and the boy with a plush toy remains silent. The boy quietly says that no one mentioned it. He reflects that for nobles, a child's birthday is an important event and a reason to boast, but there are no plans. The agitated woman decides to investigate the situation. The boy watches as the woman exits through the large doors. The woman returns disappointed, reporting that her attempt to find out anything was unsuccessful. The boy smiles weakly, realizing he had expected this outcome. The adult man notes that Theo's condition is too unstable for a celebration, and they still know nothing. The boy understands there will be no celebration and tells this to the other child. The woman begins to suspect that besides Lord Tio's condition, there is another reason for the lack of a celebration. A man stands by the window, pondering that no one has actually told him what the matter is. A small hand clutches at the fabric of clothing, and a surprised question is voiced. A fair-haired boy looks at Tio with trepidation and anxiety, worrying about him. The woman notices that the boy himself started to worry after seeing Tio's sadness. Tio hugs the boy tightly, as if trying to comfort him. The woman smiles softly, watching their interaction. On the grass, the woman joyfully calls Lord Tio to play further. She notes to herself that Tio always frowns. After the news of the holiday's cancellation, Tio refuses to play, citing other commitments. A woman's hand takes the child's hand, comforting him with words about his brother's kindness. She explains that her brother was trying to hide his sadness. The woman is sad, dreaming of organizing at least a small celebration on this special day. Quick footsteps are heard, for a birthday is approaching. The Duke, suddenly called out to, is surprised and asks what happened. The young man tells the girl with a surprised look that he has to leave on business due to problems at the trading company. The boy excitedly asks the adults for permission to celebrate Tio's birthday. He admits that now is not the best time for a celebration, but he still hopes for an exception. Against the backdrop of memories of someone else's joyful celebration, someone feels loneliness and sadness. The girl doesn't want the children to ever experience being forgotten on their birthday. She insists that they be allowed to have even a small celebration just for their family. The man reluctantly agrees, letting them do as they wish. He only asks to keep it all a secret. The girl, with shining eyes, joyfully confirms his words in front of the children. Everyone, with smiles, congratulates Teo on his birthday. For the celebration, Theo's favorite apple pie is brought out, delighting the birthday boy. The girl shyly admits that her gift is modest, but she gives it with all her heart. The hero remembers his favorite childhood toy, which he tried to fix when it broke, putting all his effort into it. He spent a lot of time locked in his room. At first, everything went badly, but later, one of the maids helped him. A boy with a warm smile presents a toy as a birthday gift to his friend, considering it a part of himself. The friend smiles joyfully and sincerely, having received such a valuable and touching gift. Upon receiving the gift, the friend beams with happiness and expresses gratitude with surprise and joy. Two adults walk down the corridor, discussing the past day, their conversation filled with reflections. 3 children and a woman are enjoying a moment of joy and treats, laughter filling the room. One of the men refuses to join the cheerful company, remaining apart. He adds that such joyful moments and warmth are not for him, and retreats into the darkness. A man stands in the room, while a baby cries in the crib. The man carefully examines the precious amulet, as if making an important decision. A dazzling light illuminates the room as the crying infant touches the amulet. The woman smiles with relief at the man, seeing the result of their actions. Several days pass after Lord Tio's birthday when the heroine delves into research and realizes that the boy's dark magic is similar to the unique magic of the ducal family. She realizes that her own magic might also be completely unique and capable of calming Tio. Unique magic belongs to a special kind of magic, accessible only to descendants of ancient noble families. Magical artifacts and relics, possessing magic, are kept as valuable family treasures. Despite rumors of the nocturnal family's magic, the heroine believes she isn't capable of even ordinary magic, let alone unique magic. The man reminds that the magic stone used to be a relic of the nocturnal family. He admits that he cannot return this stone to its owners yet. The woman agrees to the terms, adding that returning it after the contract is completed will not be a problem. The magic stone begins to resonate with its owner's unique energy. The majestic hall fills with relief as the magic experiment proves successful. The man doubtfully examines the gemstone, realizing that repeated use is only possible to a limited extent. The woman notes that the stone changes color with each use, but is glad they managed to buy some time. A new person and a maid enter the hall, announcing the return of Lord Theo's nanny. Marie introduces herself, promising to help Lady Clarissa and talking about her knightly past. Marie's story is revealed in detail. She used to be Lord Theo's mother's bodyguard, and her family belongs to a famous knightly lineage. Lady Clarissa is genuinely happy to meet her, and for the improved situation in the house. Now that they have Theo's nanny and the magic stone, it's possible to get some rest. I remember how, in the past, caring for a child occupied all days and nights without a single break. Lady Clarissa looks thoughtful, reflecting on the changes in their lives. The man addresses the Duchess with a request, about to voice his wish. Thanks to Maria's help, the heroine finally gets the opportunity to leave the estate and go to her lands for an important reason. She decides to thank Lord Eric, clutching his ornament tightly in her hand. Upon learning of her departure, the boy asks with surprise about the reasons for her return to the estate. The heroine explains that she wants to study the unique magic of the nocturnal family, believing that this knowledge could help Theo. The boy hesitates for a moment, then makes his decision. With trepidation, he hands the girl the amulet, explaining its significance. The girl, surprised, accepts the amulet, realizing its value to the boy. In a comical scene, the boy emphasizes that the amulet is only on loan for Theo's peace of mind, and the girl rejoices. Lord Eric notices that it is his magic stone, surprised by what is happening. Lord Eric, with a smile, confirms that her amulet is very similar to his own. The heroine reflects on the Duke's trust in Lord Rusty, feeling responsible for the magic stone. The magic stone turns out to be a special crystal that appears at the moment of the first use of magic. Magic stones are considered incredibly valuable because to give such a stone is an expression of the deepest trust and a desire to protect. The woman feels happy because she has been recognized as a worthy keeper of such a gift. Looking out the window, the heroine reflects on recent events and her own feelings. She recalls her first experience using magic and wonders why a magic stone didn't appear then. The mother holds a child in her arms, but no magic is manifesting around them. The heroine wonders if she had used unique magic before without realizing it and regrets not remembering anything. Her return home is met by cheerful children, joyfully running towards Lady Clarissa. The children surrounded the returned heroine with shouts, asking for attention and affection for their good behavior. She apologizes to the children, reminding them that she is still performing her duties. The kids immediately decide to play with their older brother, pulling him away with them. With an embarrassed smile, the heroine thanks Lord Rusty for his kindness, watching him surrounded by cheerful children. Immersed in her work, the heroine returns to her research, inspired by new discoveries. After her father's death, all important documents were moved by her mother to the estate and carefully collected. In the large study, the mistress instructs the maid Fee to search for information about unique magic. Fee is surprised that she got a job with the ducal family, something she had never even dreamed of. The maid Fee smiles and is genuinely happy that her mistress is in good health. The mistress remarks with a smile that the Duke's children are very sweet and bring warmth to her heart. She reflects that she doesn't fully understand the Duke's intentions, although she doesn't consider him a bad person. Fee asks to leave all the estate chores to the servants, because now they have support and life has become even better than before. The maid gratefully recalls how the mistress and her late mother saved everyone in this house. The mistress leaves the room and, surrounded by soft light, thoughtfully walks down the corridor. She recalls moments from the past and thinks she was happy even when she lived here. Now it seems to her that from the outside, this happiness looked different, not as it felt from within. Her quiet footsteps echo in the corridor, and she leaves, lost in thought. While in the corridor, the heroine thoughtfully reflects on the essence of true happiness. At the gates of the estate, guards block the path of an indignant girl in a bright dress. The green-eyed girl introduces herself with a smile, surprising the caretaker. Suddenly appearing, she addresses her sister with mischievous joy in her voice. The heroine looks coldly and resolutely at the uninvited guest, not hiding her displeasure at her appearance. A frightened girl in a hat with a flower wonders why she is suspected of being bossy. Two young men discuss that no amount of guard support can change the situation, and someone's mercy has nothing to do with it. A woman with silver hair hugs the girl, tenderly explaining that she was worried about her. The surprised girl remembers that she went to look for the family stone. The heroine shares the news that the family stone will only be returned if she works at the estate. The woman with silver hair smiles and says the name of the Duke the girl will serve. Looking seriously at her interlocutor, she accuses the girl of selling the relic to a merchant, demanding she stop pretending. The girl in the red dress reacts in horror to the accusation, not hiding her shock. Holding her fingers with trembling hands, she tearfully reproaches her sister for unfair accusations. The girl cries, excusing herself by saying that she is not the only one to blame, as the relic was lost by her sister herself. Surrounded by two guards, the girl bitterly covers her face with her hands, wiping away tears. The woman in the blue dress realizes something new with astonishment, mentally repeating what she heard. The girl, covering her face with her hands, feels that Annette has come again to take something precious from her. The uncle and aunt, with joyful faces, demonstrate their true attitude, taking her valuables. Embracing the little heroine, Annette was different. She gradually deprived her of everything dear. The teacher recalls the guardian's words about the girl's inability to learn, lamenting the beloved books destroyed by Annette. On the table are spoiled volumes. Teachers begin to hate the girl because of Annette's pranks. The man reproachfully asks if the heroine is mocking her sister, and he himself is disappointed in her. Annette was even ready to intentionally hurt herself so that the groom would believe her lies. And the heroine desperately assures him that she is not guilty of anything. Among the crowd of men, Annette, with feigned sadness, asks them to stop offending her sister. The realization that everything that happened was part of Annette's plan shocks the heroine. The understanding of the truth comes too late, and she is left alone in the darkness. Unable to bear the injustice, the heroine flees to the house left to her by her mother. Soon, a thought comes to her mind. Annette had never actually been to this estate. The woman with silver hair pauses in thought, her lips trembling with emotion. A young boy with kind eyes offers a relic and wishes Clarissa a safe return. Clenching the relic in her hand, the woman remembers that since her mother's death, no one had waited for her or worried about her. In these moments, she felt truly happy. Even if only for a short time, Lord Eric trusted her. She firmly decides that she will not allow Annette to do whatever she wants. However, her sister, with a sly smile, reminds her that the family stone will not return until the contract is fulfilled, no matter what method they come up with. The girl's eyes fill with anxiety, and her voice breaks into a desperate scream as she begs her sister to stop. Unexpectedly, the sister hugs the woman tightly, hurting her with her sudden abruptness. Both look at the relic with surprise, not believing that a magical stone is truly before them. The girl in the red dress accuses her sister of cruelty, mentioning that they should have started the proceedings with the inheritance issue. She cunningly whispers in the woman's ear, assuring her that they will definitely take care of the money themselves. A cold hand clenched in the air, reminding them of the need to follow the contract and continue working. Tension hung between the two girls. One of them angrily turned away and put her hand to her face. The gray-eyed heroine, looking away, admitted that the magic stone did not belong to their family at all. The girl in the bright pink attire, surprised and defiantly, asked why the stone was still being worn then. The silver-haired sister, not hiding her indignation, forbade touching the relic with dirty hands. Stunned, the blonde in the hat with a rose stepped back, pressing her palm to her cheek. A new outburst of anger flared up in the garden. Words about arrogance and family belonging hung between them. Fury erupted with renewed force when one of the girls devastatingly reminded her of her inability to use magic. Ice rapidly surrounded the girl with silver hair, and she froze in surprise and fear. The realization of danger gripped the main character. If this continued, everyone would be in jeopardy. Amidst flashes and cracks, the magic stone loses its former power, plunging everything around into darkness and chaos. A burst of magical energy crashes down on the girl in the red dress, fear and despair reflected on her face. The gray-eyed girl looks at the locket in surprise, realizing she holds a magic stone in her hands. Before the bright light and sun glare, the boy extends a magical amulet, wishing Lady Clarissa a safe return. The silver-haired girl presses the amulet to her chest with heartfelt gratitude, feeling its protection. The golden-haired girl in red, trembling with anger and shock, anxiously notes the power of the magic stone. The power of confidence radiates in her movement as she decisively turns, preparing for a new action. The gray-eyed girl, noticing her departure, asks with surprise and concern where she is going. Behind the tree, the boy fearfully and hesitantly calls out to Clarissa, hoping for her help. The enraged green-eyed girl screams menacingly, ready to punish her rival, while Clarissa rushes to the boy, ordering him to run. Magical ice shards fly towards the boy and the woman, and she instinctively covers him with her body. A bright veil of a protective spell envelops them, and the woman realizes its power with astonishment. The girl in red notices with horror that her spell has been reflected, and looks at her opponents indignantly. The young man turns to Clarissa with concern, asking about her condition after what happened. Clarissa is surprised to recognize Lord Rusty and suspects that he was the one who used magic. Lord Rusty admits that he is not strong in offensive spells, but is excellent at defense. Clarissa, holding the boy firmly by the shoulder, assures him that as long as her magic shield is active, everything is under control. Recalling the attack, Lord Rusty notes with cold determination that he did not expect an attack on a child. The girl in red is not going to give up, confidently proclaiming her determination to break through the shield. Clarissa exclaims about Lord Rusty's extraordinary abilities, and he just smiles gently. Lord Rusty, whispering into Clarissa's ear, asks her to keep his true capabilities a secret, because formally he is just a secretary. Clarissa, with thoughts stirring that all his power is hidden for protection in case of danger, wonders about his responsibility. Lord Rusty confidently declares that it is his duty to protect everything dear to His Highness. Clarissa is astonished, realizing that she has become exactly what Lord Rusty wants to protect. With a slight smile, Clarissa agrees that if anything were to happen to her, it would become a problem for Lord Theodore. The young woman in the red dress stands stunned, despairing that her spells had no effect, while a tall man approaches her. Rusty, with a cold expression, shows a mysterious magical artifact, asking a clarifying question. The girl, confused, recognizes this stone as the same jewel that belongs to her sister and reminds herself of the importance of this gift. Rusty, with an arrogant smile, tacitly reminds her that the true meaning of the situation is known to every nobleman. His gaze becomes dangerous as he warns the girl about the price she will have to pay for her stubbornness. Frightened, she hastily runs away, leaving the others behind. Rusty and Clarissa exchange a few words. She is comforted that everything is all right now and that she won't be back. The woman, relieved, thanks the man for his support, feeling safe. Internally joyful, she promises that upon returning home, she will thank her saviors for their kindness and help. Castle towers rise above the sunset, and a sinister voice asks about the well-being of his opponents. A grim man appears with a captive, announcing that if they want to save the hostages, they will have to accept his terms. In the dim light, guarded by armed men, bound captives sit, full of terror and anxiety for their future. A frightened merchant, the father of one of the hostages, learns the threatening conditions. If anyone dares to resist, all prisoners in the castle will be killed. Two armed guards mockingly demand a decision from the Grand Duke, accusing him of heartlessness and a willingness to sacrifice even children. The bandits tense up when they hear a confident voice asserting that the master of the situation is not inclined to give up just because there are hostages. The protagonist's formidable gaze pierces through walls, his words full of confidence. His adversaries have greatly underestimated him. In front of the castle walls, surrounded by guards, the protagonist stops, awaiting the Grand Duke's decision. At this time, the villain, holding the child hostage and threatening with a knife, forces a choice between the child's life and the magical stones. The majestic and composed Duke appears against the tense backdrop, intently observing the unfolding events. Knights arrive to help, their presence filling the scene with determination and hope. One of the knights is surprised that someone dared to challenge the powerful Duke for the family stones. A man with a sly smile remarks that perhaps someone wishes to test the Duke's reputation in practice. The Duke, with a touch of irony, notes the sharpness of his interlocutor's tongue. His gaze turns serious, as he already has suspicions about the true culprit behind what is happening. One of the knights, awaiting orders, assures that he can neutralize the enemies in case of a fight. The Duke warns his enemies that he will not yield, even though they have hostages. Magical power flares in the Duke's eyes, and he makes it clear that he has been severely underestimated. Witnesses to the scene watch in awe and fear the incredible destructive magic displayed by the Duke. Magical energy engulfs the boy, and he realizes in astonishment that before him is not an ordinary person, but a true monster. The Duke calmly gives orders, noting that the high-ranking officers were spared. The knights quickly gather and go to carry out the order. Other hostages are found among the ruins and are being freed. A frightened child rushes into his father's arms, unable to hold back tears of relief. The Duke reassures everyone, stating that they are now under protection. A gentle smile appears on the man's face, reflecting his inner peace. One of the hostages in a black cloak is sitting on the floor, while a young man watches intently nearby. The Duke carefully inquires if another rescued child was harmed. In response, His Grace received a polite "thank you." The Duke asks a clarifying question about the place of the abduction. The enemies are disarmed, and the knights show the captured gang leader. The Duke and his associate interrogate the leader, trying to find out how much he knows. The suspect is asked if he was aware of exactly whom he had taken hostage. The Duke's gaze turns cold, for retribution for the kidnapping demands a far greater price than a simple life. The leader, in fear, makes excuses, assuring them that he was only following orders. A knight rushes in with news of found fire traps and gasoline, confirming the malicious intent to burn down the entire hideout. Fearing exposure, the criminal swears ignorance and promises to reveal the name of his employer. The Duke warns that the culprit had better know what he himself has not yet figured out. Later, his associate admires the Duke's insight, and the Duke explains that he felt a magical power. In reflection, the question is raised as to who is behind this conspiracy, and it turns out that the abduction took place on Count Nocturnal's territory. The Duke concludes that the trail leads to the family of a certain woman. Meanwhile, an unknown girl reflects on her family's magic, capable of removing curses and evil forces. She understands that if her magic works on Lord Tio, it will prove the existence of a real curse on him. Through the carriage window, the travelers noticed their family mansion in the distance, and the heart of one of the passengers tightened with relief. The woman, stepping into the courtyard, noticed the return of people dear to her and hurried to meet them, in front of all the servants. Tio opened his arms to rush to his mother after a long separation. In a bright burst of joy, the little one tightly hugs his mother and laughs happily, feeling the long-awaited warmth of a native embrace. The boy thoughtfully remarks that everything turned out well and believes that the credit for this belongs to Lord Eric. The Lord, with a kind smile, draws the boy's attention to the importance of expressing gratitude. The child, a little embarrassed, quietly says hello, genuinely happy to be home. The mother and her children finally reunite in a loving embrace, forgetting all their worries. The Lord, slightly nervous, turns to Lady Clarissa, about to say something to her. Looking seriously into her eyes, the boy says he wants to tell her something very important about Theo. A hand squeezes the glass, the drink spills, and tension and despair fill the air. The man, recalling the past, curses the mercenaries, his face contorted with anxiety. The woman in the outfit worries about the future, fearing that the family stone cannot be recovered. The man with silver hair pulls himself together and says he has a plan. A bright light illuminates an elegant room where an important conversation is unfolding. A small child reaches for a hand, preparing for action. Two children look forward in surprise. One of them cries out. Eric, with dark hair, stands behind a child with golden eyes, both tense with anticipation. The girl looks at Theo with joy and admiration, her eyes shining with pride. The boy, with a cunning expression, announces that this is not all, and the girl is surprised by his words. The toddler, with a serious look, demonstrates his skills, balancing on a rocking toy and a scooter. Dark-haired Eric confidently states that they trained while waiting for the others. The woman enthusiastically notes the child's incredible progress. She claps her hands, watching the baby joyfully walk towards her. The woman says they will definitely show this achievement to his radiance, and the young man wonders where he is now. The young man reports that His Grace is on an important expedition. The woman regretfully notes that they will show the success to the baby later and wonders if this will please His Grace. A grim man with red eyes asks about the significance of the baby being able to stand, and the interlocutors note that they will mention it in the report. The woman joyfully decides that since the child can now stand, they should take advantage of it. The interlocutors conclude that they cannot call the shoemaker without His Highness's permission, so they become thoughtful. The boy is sad because he cannot carry out his plan. His mood drops. The woman offers to buy shoes for the baby herself, surprising the boy. The company can be seen walking along a bright, cozy city street amidst the sun and flowers. The woman admits with surprise that this is her first time walking around the city, as she always stayed on the estate before. The boy anxiously draws Lady Clarissa's attention, noticing her pensiveness. Clarissa admits with a touch of sadness that she regrets Lord Theo couldn't join them. The woman says that Maria is looking after the baby, and she herself is ready to take on the remaining duties. Eric sadly lowers his gaze, feeling a slight melancholy, but continues to speak. He comforts himself with the thought that he will soon be spending time with Theo again. The boy admits that he would have liked Clarissa to pay attention only to him today, as she had recently returned. Clarissa is stunned by the boy's words. Surprise and confusion appear on her face. Taking his hand, she hurries to show him everything in the city, and he gladly agrees. The woman working in the shop says she will contact them when the shoes are ready. Clarissa hands the boy a gift box, explaining that this present is for him. She explains that the boy will be able to wear these ordinary shoes when he plays with Theo in the garden. Clarissa tenderly notes that, thanks to the boy, she feels saved. The boy agrees to accept the gift, winking a little shyly. At the market, he unexpectedly gives Clarissa a bouquet of flowers, and she is surprised by his gesture. Clarissa smiles radiantly, clutching the received flowers to herself. She reflects that the city is much more pleasant than she expected, as the residents here are friendly. The young man notices that his grace has returned, and a crowd begins to gather in the city. Clarissa suggests that everyone greet the newcomer together, their footsteps echoing on the cobblestones. Many townspeople gather in the square, watching the returnees with interest. A stern man appears on horseback, with a boy in a black cloak in front of him. Clarissa gazes at the child in astonishment, noticing something special. She is struck to see that the boy has the same eyes as the Duke. Women in the crowd discuss the unfamiliar child next to his grace, speculating about his origins. Rumors are circulating that the Duke has an illegitimate son, as he is unmarried, and everyone is surprised by this news. Clarissa and the boy, confused, turn to the young lord, who doesn't understand what's happening. The boy in the cloak throws back his hood, revealing his face, and attracting the attention of those gathered. The majestic mansion shines in the sunlight, and a maid with a sweet child in her arms greets Lord Eric and Lady Clarissa. The lady with silver hair thanks Maria, taking the child into her arms. A little nervously, Lady Clarissa is about to ask something about the Duke. A man in a black vest enters the hall, asking where Lady Clarissa had been, and the maid greets him with excitement. Lady Clarissa explains that they went to buy Lord Theo's first pair of shoes, and the man is surprised by this. Lady Clarissa smiles back happily. Theo demonstrates his ability to stand, and the man watches her closely, surprised. Lady Clarissa and the child cautiously watch the man, wondering if he is angry. The man smiles approvingly, praising her for a good job. Lady Clarissa breathes a sigh of relief, hugging the smiling child tighter. The man notices the magic stone, making a mental note of it. The boy joyfully announces that he gave this stone to Lady Clarissa. The man looks at the boy in surprise and asks a question. The boy excitedly explains that Lady Clarissa is now very important to all of them. Mentally, the boy shyly admits that, at least for him, she is indispensable, as cat ears and a tail appear on him. The man quietly agrees, shown from a low angle with a slightly gloomy atmosphere. A hand gently strokes the boy's head, promising to ask for more details. The man smiles approvingly and praises the boy. The lady with the child in her arms smiles with relief, feeling calm and joyful. The man announces that he wants to introduce Eric and Lady Clarissa to someone new. He urges everyone to gather and go together. Lady Clarissa, with the child and the boy, watch the events with anxiety and curiosity. Theo and Maria enter through the doors, drawing everyone's attention. The man announces that due to certain circumstances, the boy will temporarily stay at the estate, asking everyone to welcome him. In the luxurious hall, the boy with golden hair officially introduces himself as William for the first time. The woman with silver hair notes with surprise how much the boy resembles Duke Albert. Eric, a little shyly, approaches and states his name. The two boys shake hands, exchanging greetings reservedly. The man announces that William has just arrived and tells Rusty to show him the estate. Rusty politely invites Lord William to enter, while the woman stays behind, watching them. The woman timidly prepares to address the man, wanting to clarify the details. The man explains that William is Eric's half-brother. Surprise is reflected on the faces of the woman and Eric as they realize that William is a half-brother. A fleeting memory surfaces of a woman with long red hair, who was never the Duke's official wife. The man reminds Eric of his status as an adopted son and his significance in the household. Eric quietly agrees, his figure frozen in complete submission and sadness. The man begins to speak about important characteristics of the nocturnal family, and the woman listens to him with hidden anxiety. The woman distractedly answers the man, who notices her inattentiveness. She politely promises to provide a written report on the matter later. The man watches what is happening with surprise. The woman still cannot believe that His Grace truly had a secret child. She reflects that illegitimate children are not uncommon among the nobility, but inwardly, there is still a sense of unease. The boy sits thoughtfully on a chair, as if lost in his own thoughts. The woman brings Eric out of his reverie by addressing him with a question. They go for a walk together in the garden, surrounded by light and fountains. At the table, the lady remembers that she only spoke a little with Lord William. She admits to herself that she doesn't know how to start a conversation with the boy, as the situation seems quite delicate to her. The boy curiously asks Lady Clarissa what she felt when she got a stepsister. The girl with silver hair is surprised by what she hears and slightly agitated. She quickly calms down, smiling softly, and reminds them of their family ties. The girl with golden hair and ribbons in her dress recalls a joyful moment from the past. The dark-haired boy lowers his head, accepting what he heard with understanding. The woman leans towards the boy and asks a question about Lord William, looking at him with interest. The boy begins to answer, his words full of uncertainty. The bright-eyed baby in a bonnet happily watches the black cat with a bow, observing its movements. The baby finds himself at the adult's feet, surprised by the new appearance. The baby's radiant face expresses delight and laughter. The young man with golden hair smiles warmly, holding a book and recognizing the little one standing before him. On a sunny lawn, a child in a costume with a blue bonnet looks surprised at the young man in a cloak who is addressing him. The little one's gaze brightens and becomes enthusiastic when he notices the cat. The young man holds a black cat, and the little one looks at it warily, embarrassed. The young man gently reminds the child to be kinder to the cat, as the little one carefully strokes the fluffy find. The guy makes a funny face, sticking out his tongue and teasing. He smiles at the baby, noting their cuteness, and the child claps their hands. Looking down, the guy muses that the baby must be very loved. The scene changes to a young man in a cloak, who recounts how he was captured by bad people. The child, still in a bonnet, looks on in surprise, clearly not understanding the situation. The cat, pleased with the attention, purrs as it's being petted, all thanks to the Duke's care. The young man notes that he probably won't be here long, but while he is, he wants to spend time together. At this time, a frightened woman and boy run through the garden, calling for Lord Theo. A black cat swiftly runs into the bushes, and the baby in a bonnet laughs joyfully, while the adult woman nearby notes with relief that the child is fine. A young man appears with a smile against a bright background, his name causing surprise among those around him. In the clearing, the adults apologize for what happened, but the young man coldly reminds them that they arrived too late. The young man, with a slight smirk, points out that the ducal nannies don't seem to be doing their job. The woman in the pink dress, flustered, tries to make excuses, her face showing embarrassment. The dark-haired boy hurries to explain that he was the one who didn't watch the baby, insisting it wasn't the nanny's fault. The young man clarifies, so even if the child had been kidnapped, it still wouldn't have been the nanny's fault? He continues, wondering that even in the event of trouble, all responsibility would be removed from the woman. The woman, stunned, admits that despite the circumstances, she was the one who failed to look after the baby. The young man discreetly notes the touching nature of her words, but considers it not the worst human trait. He turns to the boy, saying that it is better to be honest than hypocritical or deceitful. The young man extends his hand to his interlocutor, putting a slight emphasis on the name Eric. William, with an outstretched hand, offers friendship, falling through light and wind. He asks with a smile if anyone would like to be a friend of the future Duke Dick. The silver-haired girl is amazed by the familiar names and tries to remember where she heard them. She hurries to stop the boy, holding a baby in her arms. The woman with the children realizes something with surprise, and the boy next to her looks suspiciously. The identity of the boy suddenly becomes clear. Before them is the first Prince William. The prince laughed at the mistaken assumption that he was the Duke's illegitimate son, and the woman and boy apologize. Clarissa reflects that she has never personally seen the prince, noting the kinship between the ducal and royal families. The prince, with a smile, acknowledges himself as Dick's older brother and says that this will never change. After the introduction, he joyfully suggests they start playing together. The children begin a friendly game of rock, paper, scissors. The prince enthusiastically starts a game of tag, running away across a sunny glade. William and Dick are stepbrothers, and a woman with a baby smiles and holds the infant in her arms. The silver-haired heroine recalls that there is a dispute in the palace over the heir to the throne. The royal court is divided into two opposing factions, some supporting the first prince. A dark-haired man warns them to stay away. The woman with the baby anxiously realizes that the warning comes from the Duke himself. A young boy desperately tries to catch up to the blonde man, who is slipping away again. He reaches forward, resolutely calling his rival to him. The boy's rapid fall interrupts his attempt to catch up. The blonde, with a triumphant smile, asks if that's all, and watches his opponent with interest. The dark-haired boy is disappointed. He doubts whether an alliance with the Duke's house will be an advantage for the future Duke. Reflecting on his role as heir, the boy admits that perhaps he is not suited for it. William stands aside, thoughtfully and silently watching the boy leave. The black-haired boy rushes forward, not wanting the Duke's entire family to be judged solely by him. He lunges at the blonde, thinking it would be easy to dodge such a lunge. The stunned blonde suddenly feels someone else's hand on his chest. A woman with a baby joyfully watches their team win the game. The prince realizes he's been caught and laughs while sitting on the grass. The young hero, with a warm smile, reflects on how brothers complement each other's shortcomings. William wonders with surprise what kind of person the Duke turns out to be. Two boys happily walk forward, holding hands and beaming against the light. A man in a vest watches them intently from behind the glass. He resolutely turns away from the window, preparing to act. Early morning illuminates the waiting room, and the shadows in the rooms grow a little longer. The man in the blue robe listens attentively, agreeing with the instructions. The young man with golden hair explains with a smile that his words were merely a test of reaction. The boy with black hair wearily responds to what was said. He remembers that his adoptive father taught him to understand people. The light-eyed interlocutor clarifies whether he understood the meaning of his words. A hand reaches across the table, offering to forget the past and officially become friends. The boy with the ears categorically refuses, surprising his interlocutor. William is stunned, and the future Duke replies reservedly. The black-haired boy explains that he cannot befriend the first prince without the Duke's permission. The golden-haired prince understands the awkwardness and suggests they be friends as equals. The boy quickly runs away, leaving the prince confused. The little hero, laughing, draws his younger friend into a new game, easily redirecting his attention. The golden-eyed prince smiles, pleased with his decision. He joyfully runs after the boy and the baby, calling them by name. The woman with silver hair smiles in relief, feeling calm. A man approaches her, and her surprise turns into anxiety. The man with red eyes reminds her of the warning to stay away. The woman reacts to his words with sadness and anxiety. She asks in surprise if he intends to confront Prince William. The castle in the background reminds them of the Duke's house's neutrality and his determination not to take sides. The woman wants to know if Lord Eric was involved in this decision. The man, surprised, asks again, pondering her words. The woman cautiously asks the boy what he thinks of Lord William. The boy sincerely admits that he wants to get to know Lord William better. The young woman sincerely admits her desire to respect the will of another. The black-haired man calmly tries to convince her not to worry, reminding her of Lord Eric's conscientiousness. He continues to speak about the importance of the successor's role, understanding the essence of what is happening. The man turns away and leaves, and the woman watches him go with surprise. Inside, she notes that her attempt was unsuccessful, though this also applies to Lord Eric. A smiling young man approaches the man, concerned about his condition. A memory appears before his eyes of two children, one holding the other, expressing mixed feelings. The man hands the document to his interlocutor, announcing the completion of the kidnapping investigation. The young man carefully reviews the document and says that their testimony will be needed to catch the culprit. He concludes that the second prince's faction is indeed behind the incident, and their target was the Duke and his house. The man confirms that he has done everything he was asked to do. The blonde man bows his head and apologizes for involving the ducal house in the struggle for the throne. A man with a serious expression reminds the interlocutor of their status and the connection between their houses. The blonde smiles gratefully and acknowledges what was said. Eric, with the baby, nervously tries to hear something, but it's no use. The girl with silver hair remarks that eavesdropping is not good. The boy with the child runs out of the room and down the hallway in confusion. Suddenly, both children pounce directly on the young aristocrat, surprising him. The Duke reacts sternly to what's happening, addressing the two little ones wearily. The woman quickly leads the boy away. Together they apologize and swiftly leave the hall. A man despairingly covers his face with his hand, while his interlocutor sits on the floor watching him. William, finding himself before the lady and the boy, is surprised by the possible attention directed at him. Eric makes excuses, explaining that he was only looking for one thing, causing confusion for everyone. Clarissa, with slight trepidation, admits that she disobeyed an order and was worried about the possible consequences for the child. William, with a slight smile, thinks about being officially recognized as the first prince and believes it was worth coming for. He sadly wonders if he will become friends with Eric, understanding that much of what lies ahead depends on circumstances. The dark-haired boy, holding the younger one in his arms, ponders the reasons why the second prince's faction does not recognize him. The image of a woman appears in the mirror, and the thought that the queen might harbor resentment. A little boy with big eyes asks if the first prince is ready to fight for the throne, even against his brother. William replies reservedly that time will tell, gently patting the child on the head. He says that as a royal descendant, he simply wants to fulfill his duty for the sake of the country, even if it leads him to rivalry with his brother. The black-haired boy watches the prince attentively, pondering his words. Calm descends on the room, the baby falls asleep, and the silver-haired woman kindly asks if Eric would like to rest too, noticing his thoughtfulness. Eric, standing by the crib, wonders what he would do if Theo wanted to become a duke. The woman is sure that if Theo had truly expressed such a wish, Eric would have given in and yielded his role to his brother. However, he understands that this would mean erasing all the years of effort and dedication he had put in until then. The woman with silver hair sadly wonders if she could have remained supportive if things had turned out differently. Suddenly, a man enters the room with a gift and an apology, saying that he brings this present on behalf of His Grace. An exquisite dress, adorned with jewels and delicate lace, unfolds on the beautiful fabric. Clarissa examines the dress in astonishment, surprised by the suddenness of such a surprise. A man with a cheerful smile explains that the Duke would like her to be his companion at one of the receptions. The woman and the boy are astonished by this offer and react to the invitation with confusion. An assassination attempt on Prince William occurred at Nocturnal's mansion, which caused a storm of emotions among those gathered. Moreover, the perpetrators tried to blame Duke Albert for what happened, which led to shock among those present. Because the child was taken hostage, the knights were forced to intervene to resolve the situation. The leader of the criminals is expected to appear at the upcoming reception, so a decision was made to cooperate for the safety of the duchy and the prince. The surprised lady asks who will look after Lord Theo, but she is immediately informed that it has already been taken care of. The children's security for the evening was entrusted to specially trained people, which causes confusion among one of the ladies regarding their sudden appearance. One of the boys confidently asks to entrust Theo's care to him and Maria, assuring Lady Clarissa of his readiness. Lady Clarissa agrees with relief, expressing her gratitude to Lord Eric. In an attempt to cheer him up, she states that she is trying for his sake too, but the boy becomes embarrassed, claiming that no one asked him to. A lady in an elegant dress enters the ballroom, noting that, despite her enthusiasm, something is bothering her. The couple in masquerade costumes attracts attention with their exquisite appearance. The young man in the mask notices his companion's unease and asks what happened. The lady in the mask admits that this is her first time at such a ball, which makes her feel nervous, despite her noble status. Her companion apologetically realizes his inattentiveness to the girl's feelings. She doubts if she can help with the investigation, but receives support and is told not to worry. The blonde girl is surprised to hear that she has nothing to do with the case, which raises questions for her. A sudden touch to her dress causes her fright and surprise. Duke Albert unexpectedly finds himself very close, firmly supporting her at that moment. He notices the appearance of a suspicious man, noting that he has finally arrived. The man in the black mask, who is being discussed, turns around with a mysterious smile. The Duke advises the lady not to look at the suspect because if she acts strangely, he might suspect something. The girl tries to cope with her anxiety and just continue dancing, as she was told. A couple in exquisite attire whirls in a dance, basking in the magical atmosphere of the ball. At this moment, it is Lady Annette's turn, her large blue eyes fixed forward, anticipating a new stage of the evening. Behind the massive hall doors, a little girl in a red dress, guided by an adult woman, learns dance steps. Clarissa remembers that she was never allowed to debut in society, but now she hopes to fulfill her dream not alone, but with someone special. Someone's gloved hand gently embraces hers, opening a path to a new world for her. During the dance, her partner notices her confusion and wonders if everything is all right. She's a little embarrassed, but tries to hide her feelings, denying any worries. With some surprise, she realizes that all her previous training is now truly in demand. Despite the difference in their worlds, she feels as if she's dreaming with his grace. She quickly pulls herself together, reminding herself that she must focus and not be distracted from the main task. After the dance, her partner calmly says it's time to go, inviting her to follow him. The two of them approach large white doors, behind which an unknown awaits them. Looking around and making sure that magic doesn't react to anything, he notes that it seems no one is here. With a dull creak, the massive door opens, allowing the heroes to enter the mysterious room. The Duke and Clarissa find themselves in a luxurious hall, filled with light and a premonition of something important, and look around. The girl in the mask realizes with a pounding heart that she has entered the VIP box, intended only for the chosen few. The Duke reveals that the leader of the conspiracy is connected to the Second Prince's faction, and he needs proof to press charges. Clarissa anxiously repeats the need for evidence, gradually realizing this faction's involvement. The young prince thoughtfully muses that he and the Duke's house were their targets. The Duke, looking into the depths of the hall, emphasizes that the Grand Duchy tries to maintain neutrality. The girl guesses that the reason for cooperating with Prince William was the desire to clear his name and avoid a false accusation of murder. The man confirms her conclusion, adding that he initially didn't want to take anyone's side, but circumstances forced him to. He firmly states that he is not going to let this matter drop. Clarissa, filled with determination, urges them not to hold back and to punish the guilty. The Duke notes with surprise that he had expected a completely different attitude from her. At the ball, amidst the opulent walls and glowing chandeliers, a young woman in a blue dress and mask stands, pondering what is happening. Despite his adult appearance, Prince William remains a child at heart, as evidenced by his carefree joy on the sunny avenue. She realizes with alarm that His Highness is almost the same age as Lord Eric, and there isn't much difference in their ages. An image of a bloody power struggle flashes through her mind, where the cards and the crown are stained with betrayal and the foolishness of factional strife. The man with a serious face accepts what he has heard, not showing his feelings to those around him. The woman is left with an unpleasant feeling, remembering how she was repeatedly offered to act against her brother, and that choice always resonated with bitterness. Sudden news makes her turn sharply, disbelieving what she heard about the return of someone important. The man's black-gloved hand grips her arm tightly, not letting her go. She shudders in fear, not knowing what to expect next. Panic overwhelms the woman. She finds herself in an unexpected and unsettling situation. The masked Duke holds the girl tightly in his arms, knowing that now is not the time for unnecessary worries. But mentally, he cannot get rid of the anxiety. Their embrace becomes too tight, making the girl feel awkwardly embarrassed by the situation. The man notices someone approaching, and anxiety appears on their faces. Voices are heard behind the door. Aristocrats are discussing whether the first prince is truly under the protection of the Grand Duke, and how this might affect their plans. The man realizes that they are being pursued by nobles from the second prince's faction. He firmly demands an end to the disrespectful talk, and someone quickly falls silent. The masked interlocutor apologizes, explaining that they were simply worried that the Grand Duke might be deceived by the first prince's words. It becomes clear that everyone gathered is hiding behind masks, and it's hard to tell who is who. One of the men is surprised, because it was all supposed to be just a fake kidnapping, so that the prince would realize his vulnerability. A memory breaks out of the darkness. A young man lies on the floor in a pool of blood, and the event unexpectedly turns into an assassination attempt. The masked man with a piercing gaze clarifies that someone present is connected to the organizational plans of what happened. The gray-haired man explains that this entire operation was strictly carried out according to someone's instructions. The girl in the mask is deeply shocked to hear a familiar voice. The voice of the man in the mask reveals the essence of the incident, to test the resolve and abilities of those involved. She notices that this very person is behind the entire operation, as he has joined the second faction. The interlocutors discuss how dangerous their plan was and how great the threat to the prince's life had been. The masked man coldly states that he understood the interlocutors' line of thought. He decides to once again ascertain the true intentions of the one who orchestrated this. The masked man leaves the meeting, apologizing to the others. One of those present asks how the leadership intends to resolve all the consequences of what happened. In a dark corner of the room, a cunning smile on a mask hides the intention that the first prince should simply disappear without a trace. The two men exchange assurances of the operation's success, recall past achievements, and promise to carry out the assigned task. The other participants assure the executor of their trust and hope to receive good news. Left alone, the girl breathes heavily and falls to her knees, taking off her mask, shocked by what has happened. The masked man clarifies that he just saw Count Nocturnal, and the girl quietly admits that he is her uncle. He processes what was said and carefully steers the conversation towards the girl's own situation. With a slight smile, she acknowledges that she was only brought in as a witness, capable of confirming the Count's identity. The man is struck by her calmness and determination, looking at her with unexpected astonishment. Clarissa, sitting on the floor, sincerely apologizes and is ready to accept any punishment for the honor of her family. He coldly formulates a possible sentence, even the execution of the entire household as murderers of the first prince. Clarissa pales, realizing that such an outcome, of course, would also affect her. His hand gently rests on her shoulder, changing the cruel sentence to something else. He acknowledges her value and makes it clear that no one can afford to lose her. The man suggests she leave all political intrigues to him, although he admits that wielding a sword would be easier. Against the backdrop of the discarded mask, his confidence rings out that he will cope with this task as well. Finally, he gently touches her head, and she, burning with embarrassed gratitude, silently thanks the Duke. The Duke calmly reminds the girl that the Count himself will face his deserved punishment, as everyone is responsible for their actions. The Count's smug face, boasting about his long list of dark deeds, flashes in her memory, and her fist involuntarily clenches. With her lips pressed together, the girl is convinced that there will be plenty of evidence for the Count's other crimes. After some time, they are met at the gates of the house, and the servant respectfully returns them to their familiar, yet now changed, daily routine. The owner of the house, with a radiant smile, speaks about the child, which slightly puzzles both guests. In the cozy room, the child and the baby peacefully snore side by side, as if the whole world around them holds no threat. The girl and the maid, peeking through the ajar door, watch this touching scene in amazement. Eric, in his sleep, quietly whispers the lady's name, revealing his childish affections. The girl, clutching the ring to her chest, blushes from the tenderness filling her heart. One of the little ones, tossing and turning, almost rolls off the bed, continuing to sleep carelessly. With a swift movement, the man scoops up the child, not allowing danger to even touch him. The answer to his care is a tiny hand, tightly gripping his sleeve, and this quiet gratitude speaks more than any words. The tired man, holding a sleepy baby close, sinks onto the edge of the bed and decides to rest beside him. Eric, already drifting into slumber, unconsciously reaches out and squeezes the adult's hand, as if asking him not to leave. The Duke, with a cold but softened gaze, tells the child to stay here, allowing him to share this quiet refuge. The silver-haired girl, caught off guard by his decision, looks at him with wide eyes, unsure how to react. When the third witness enters the room, the girl frantically tries to justify herself, and the man awkwardly bends over the two sleeping children, creating a comical misunderstanding. Clarissa, looking at the sleeping Duke in the glowing twilight of the bedroom, thinks about how tired he must be after a long day. The dark-haired man sleeps a deep, carefree sleep, relaxed and vulnerable in the soft light of the night. She timidly watches his peaceful face, seeing for the first time how the strict Duke rests so quietly and serenely. Realizing her intense gaze might seem impolite, she shyly looks away and takes a step back from the bed. She hesitates at the head of the bed, seeing the Duke sleeping next to the baby, and her heart yearns to lie down beside them, though her mind whispers of propriety. Carefully, so as not to wake anyone, she reaches out and gently intertwines her fingers with his warm, relaxed palm. Eric, still asleep, sensing the familiar touch, squeezes her hand tighter, as if afraid to let go of the comfort he has found. The woman notices with surprise how his fingers cling to her and feels a timid joy mixed with trepidation. The woman, whispering his name in her heart, looks with trepidation at the peacefully sleeping Eric, feeling tenderness fill her chest. Yielding to temptation for just a minute, she sits down beside him on the edge of the bed, promising herself that she will only stay for a very short time. The morning commotion shatters the fragile calm when the Duke, the children, and the agitated nanny find themselves together in one bed, to their fright. The older boy, blushing, shifts his gaze from his father to the nanny, unable to fully comprehend the strange, yet somehow heartwarming scene. The dark-haired boy wakes up in the soft morning light and, remembering the night's events, smiles with unexpected warmth. Theo, with a squeal of delight, rushes to his older brother as soon as he gets out of bed, noisily disrupting his morning peace. The awakened baby furiously slaps the sleeping nanny's cheek, trying to wake her with his clumsy little hands. The older boy, deciding to spare the tired nanny, pulls the indignant toddler away, thinking about how late they went to bed. Already in the hall, the little mischief maker breaks free from his brother's hands and starts something, making the brother watch his fussing warily. The child, with shining golden eyes and making a victory gesture, conspiratorially shifts all responsibility for the future reprimand onto the older one. The nanny, suddenly jumping up, realizes in horror that she had dozed off next to the master and frantically tries to compose herself. The Duke, in his sleep, takes her hand and squeezes it tightly, unwilling to let go of the unexpected comfort he has found. He continues to sleep with an impassive face, carefully holding her fingers as if they were the only quiet support in this morning. A blinding flash of realization pierces the woman, her cheeks flush, and her thoughts scatter in a panic from the awkwardness. Clarissa, with a strained smile and a tremor in her voice, rushes to apologize, trying somehow to smooth over the embarrassing situation. Already slipping out of the room and hearing the steady breathing of the still sleeping Duke behind her, she desperately asks herself how she could have fallen asleep so carelessly. The awakened Duke opens his crimson eyes and gloomily recalls the strange morning touch. Getting out of bed and pressing his palm to his chest, he tries to calm the sudden excitement left over from the dream. In his study, he distractedly leafs through papers, noticing that today it took him unusually long to get back to work. Already composed and cold, he curtly dismisses his subordinate's request, once again hiding his turmoil behind a stern posture. The memory of that morning returns as he, in uniform, exits the hall, carrying a silent secret with him. An image of himself surfaces in his thoughts, sleeping and convulsively holding someone's hand, the warmth of which he didn't want to let go of. The Duke admits to himself that he allowed himself something unusual, almost inappropriate for a stern Duke. Leaning over the documents, he convinces himself that he only promised her support and protection, nothing more. The advisor, with a lively smile, calls everyone back to work, diffusing the tense atmosphere. In the living room by the fireplace, children play on the rug, while the nanny, with a baby in her arms, stares absently into space, lost in thought. Another maid anxiously calls out to her and offers help with the baby, pulling her out of her reverie. When her partner jokingly recalls the infamous incident with the hands and shifts the blame to Lord Teo, the nanny, with burning cheeks, once again sees the Duke's sleeping face and their intertwined fingers before her. The nanny, blushing and throwing up her hands, half-jokingly condemns Lord Teo for his antics. Theo and Eric stand before her, exchanging bewildered glances, and she hastily excuses her nephew's loneliness and admits that she too should apologize. Remaining on the edge of the sofa, she lowers her head and clasps her fingers together, thinking that she should be the one to apologize for her uncle's behavior. The boys admit that they learned about the incident from the Duke himself, which completely stuns her. Eric, recalling his father's instructions, seriously explains that one can only judge people by knowing the truth, and that is why they intervened. The Duke's stern back flashes in her memory, and her mind latches onto the question of whether Lord Eric participated in making that decision. The woman realizes with unexpected relief that the Duke wasn't angry then, but merely thoughtfully considering what was happening. She gets ready, and looking at Eric, carefully brings up the topic of his uncle, intending to set everything straight. Tio hands her a stack of papers, admitting that after learning everything, he couldn't stand by and decided to help. Unfolding the sheets and reading the lines, she realizes that the boys really had thought of a possible way out of the situation. Eric eagerly confirms that they have a plan, his eyes burning with determination and childlike pride. Two young conspirators solemnly announce their plan to punish Count Nocturnal, standing shoulder to shoulder like victors. Above a huge map, the heroes in the majestic hall ponder what is happening, trying first to understand the tangled situation. The kingdom is splitting into two warring factions, where the figures of young princes delineate borders of lands and someone's ambitions. The queen, a former princess of an enemy power, sacrifices her heart in a political marriage for a fragile peace. In the silence of whispering petals, one recalls the queen's long childlessness, after which a concubine with a child enters the monarch's life. The second prince stick is born after these events, like a late but significant stroke in the family portrait of the dynasty. The cold conclusion about the queen's few allies is heard against the backdrop of an almost equal confrontation between two factions, maintaining a precarious balance. The narrative smoothly transitions to the supporters of the second prince, whose faction forms around him, as around a cautious but promising figure. Among his supporters are many who approach the former enemy princess solely for personal gain, staining court intrigues with a dark shade of self-interest. The girl, with a heavy sigh, admits that one of these self-serving people is her uncle, and this admission weighs heavier than any accusation. The young interlocutor realizes with shock that someone he knows is capable of such an outrageous act, and in his eyes, shattered trust flickers. Clarissa apologizes awkwardly, admitting that she considered her uncle to be just a small fry, unworthy of serious attention. An arrogant uncle comes to mind, sprawled on the couch, ready to even threaten the Grand Duke for an inheritance and a magic stone. The golden-eyed prince, suddenly realizing everything, turns to his comrade with delight, and an epiphany flashes between them like lightning. The silver-haired girl looks up in confusion, feeling a missing piece slowly fall into place in her mind. The prince recalls the kidnapping and, frowning, admits that the mercenary demanded not gold and titles, but a mysterious magic stone. Two boys, clutching sheets of paper, read their plan and marvel at how well thought out and daring it is. Watching them, the mentor understands with a warm smile that children grow up exactly like this, step by step through serious decisions. In a spacious office, bathed in sunlight, the young conspirators appear before the adults, ready to explain the reasoning behind their conclusions. Eric clearly states that the Count needs both the prince and the magic stone, so together they developed a counterattack plan. The Duke carefully reads their note and reservedly acknowledges that everything presented looks more than convincing. He assesses the strategy and, with unexpected seriousness, entrusts both boys with a part of the overall plan, treating them as true allies. Hearing these words, the boys light up with joy, realizing that they are being accepted not as children, but as equal participants in the game. The tall man gently ruffles the younger boy's hair, and in this unspoken approval, there is a simple recognition of their merits. Under his palm, the boys smile shyly, hiding their blushes, and for the first time, feel truly needed and strong. The Duke, with a gentle yet significant gesture, places his palm on the young prince's head, acknowledging his contribution and strength. The boys, pressing shoulders against each other, laugh with relief and quiet pride for the work done. The governess anxiously clarifies the adults' plans, and the Duke calmly replies that it's time for children to learn from real deeds, recalling his own youth. Another man, smiling, assures her that the boys won't be allowed near any real danger, and her tense shoulders visibly relax. Examining the note and tapping his fingers on the edge, the Duke admits that the author still has many gaps, although the initial results are already impressive. He muses that for such an age, the mere ability to look ahead is worth an entire mature strategy. The cheerful commander jokingly remarks that His Grace is surprisingly skilled at raising strong subordinates, and it seems he's no worse with children. The Duke announces a meeting request from the Guardian, who wants to know how busy his adopted daughter is in this house. Hearing this, the governess exclaims in shock and mentally resents that the man remembers his daughter at such a moment. In the shadow of the columns, the Duke smirks, concluding that the guest is only coming to make sure if the magic stone is included in his payment. The commander approvingly summarizes that the children indeed did brilliantly, like experienced strategists. A few days later, the mentor, with the baby in her arms, meets two boys, and in her apologetic gaze, a new, barely begun chapter of their story is felt. Two smartly dressed boys enter the bright hall. One of them, with a mischievous smile, reminds them of an important matter. Young Clarissa, with silvery hair, holds a bewildered baby in her arms, reflecting on the recent busyness of the older children. In the baby's imagination, an image of his mother appears, who enthusiastically explains that the Grand Duke needed the elder brother's help, turning it into a secret mission. The woman leaves the room to get a child's coat, leaving the baby alone in the middle of a tall hall. The baby, looking into the emptiness of the huge room, quietly moans and fidgets, feeling a nascent anxiety. His gaze stops on a wooden horse standing by the wall, like a strange guardian of this palace world. Suddenly, Theo reaches forward with delight, as if he has found salvation or a new goal for a small feat. A young man in an elegant suit majestically greets a guest at the estate gates. An elderly count with gray hair and a neat mustache appears at the main entrance, emphasizing the importance of the visit. Theo, with glowing amber eyes, crawls across the marble floor with the determination of a tiny explorer. Later, a woman admiringly examines doll replicas of the boys, and they accept her praise with slightly embarrassed pride. In a lavish hall, an agitated woman with a maid hurries down the corridor, loudly searching for little Theo. Under an elegant marble table, almost completely hidden, a tiny child scrambles and hides. The baby, stretched out on the floor, stubbornly crawls forward, eyes gleaming with determination. Stopping before a grand staircase, the child looks down in horror at the dazzling steps. The image of the older boy comes to mind, strictly instructing to be careful on the stairs and hold on to the railing. Gathering his courage, the little one clings to the ornate railing and uncertainly begins to climb the steps. Reaching the top, the child tiredly and proudly rubs his eye, feeling like a true winner. Meanwhile, downstairs on the serving table, a fragrant apple pie, Theo's favorite treat, gleams under a cloche. The little one, losing his balance, tumbles head over heels into a flowering bush, while in the hall, a polite invitation is extended to Count Nocturnal. From the snow-white branches, a child's face timidly peeks out, eyes warily watching what is happening. Two adult men and a maid suddenly appear before him, and Theo freezes in the bushes, startled. One of the men, with a scornful smile, rejects the apple pie, arrogantly dismissing the common sweets. The smiling blonde, with polite coolness, reminds the guest that a timely arrival would have allowed for proper hospitality. The gloomy guest with a mustache, suppressing his irritation, agrees to wait inside the mansion. In the tall hall, the host, towering over the seated maids, entrusts them with the reception duties, taking care of the rest himself. Carefully exhaling, the blonde recalls the Duke's order to let the uninvited guest into the estate, though he himself doubts it. With scarlet eyes, Eric resolutely orders the guest to be left alone in the room, intending to observe his true intentions. In the spacious hall, the blonde, against the backdrop of a trolley with treats and flowers, pauses in thought, warily listening to the silence. In the reception room, the guest sinks heavily into an armchair, emitting waves of irritation at the thought that the host dared to be late. A self-satisfied smirk and an internal monologue reveal his secret plan to arrive early to test the Duke and confirm his own suspicions. With feigned courtesy, he reaches for the lid of the dish, preparing to finally taste the offered delicacy. The next moment, his body and the chair fly backward, tripped by an invisible obstacle in the middle of the hall. He finds himself on the floor amidst scattered snacks and a crooked trolley, looking around in bewilderment at the source of the chaos. Across the marble floor, happily moving his little arms and legs, crawls a beaming Theo, who has unwittingly caused the entire scene. Clarissa freezes, struck by a sudden realization, her eyes widening at an unsettling thought. Walking through the bright hall beside her maid, she ponders in confusion, as if she heard her uncle's voice, though he isn't supposed to arrive until tomorrow. Little Theo, old enough to constantly escape his stroller, stealthily climbs out, giving in to his insatiable curiosity. Despite all precautions, he crawls away again, his antics carefully watched by a smiling woman near the stroller. To avoid losing the little runaway, a special bracelet is created for him, which the baby greets with an excited squeal and a radiant smile. The woman closes her eyes and concentrates, knowing that with this bracelet, Lord Theo's magic can now be tracked. Suddenly, her face pales and her eyes widen as she realizes exactly where the child is now. Theo's perception transforms the gloomy corner into a world of eerie shadows and monsters, looming over him in utter darkness. An agitated cry breaks the silence, and someone's voice frantically calls Theo's name. Two boys, one with a flashlight in hand, are stunned to find the little one, and are amazed to discover that he has run away again. In the spacious, almost unlit room, one of them carries Theo in his arms, while the other hurries to the window, deciding to let in more light to chase away the child's fear. Clinging to the edge of his rescuer's clothes, Theo, with teary eyes, whispers Eric's name, holding on to him as his only comfort. Eric, flushed with excitement, hugs Theo and realizes with astonishment that the baby has just clearly pronounced his name. William, smiling broadly, teases Theo, guessing that he ran away because of a strong desire to see Eric. In response, Theo laughs and hugs Eric around the neck, and Eric beams with happiness, unable to believe that he was the baby's first word. William squints with a mischievous glint in his eyes, and, as if summarizing, comes up with a new plan. He joyfully announces his decision, and Theo, beaming, raises his hand. And Eric, looking bewildered, realizes that the child has already been drawn into their secret mission. The golden-haired youth, putting a finger to his lips, asks them to keep this endeavor a secret. After some time, Eric and Theo, covered in colorful chalk and tired from playing, peacefully snore side by side among scattered pencils. In the luxurious study, the Duke and his companion appear before the gloomy Count Nocturnal, politely apologizing for the long delay. The Count, smirking smugly, flatters the Grand Duke and casually asks him to invite his daughter, and the Duke's gaze becomes warily cold. The boy, with paint-smeared cheeks, blinks sleepily in the light, as if waking up after a long game. The woman with silvery hair waves joyfully, while the dark-haired boy recoils in horror at her unexpected appearance. Holding a sleepy infant in her arms, the woman recounts with surprise that Lord Theo wears a bracelet with her magic stone. The boy carefully examines the shining bracelet on the baby's wrist, pondering the magic that protects the child even in tears. The fair-haired boy, with a curious glint in his eyes, is interested in Lady Clarissa's magic stone, while his embarrassed friend vehemently denies it. The maid and Lady Clarissa, with warm smiles, look at the sleeping Theo, remembering that the magic stone had already been given to her. Lady Clarissa notices a strange shimmer in the air and becomes alert, sensing an unusual magical aura around the room. Slowly walking through the hall with the child in her arms, she wonders if this mysterious magic is connected to the knight's secret mission. Stopping by a rope hanging from the ceiling, the surprised woman anxiously catches it with the shoulder free from the baby. Lady Clarissa respectfully apologizes for the interruption and, together with the maid, prepares to leave the hall, letting the boys continue their studies. She is called, and she turns around with slight surprise, still holding the peacefully sleeping child to her chest. Eric, blushing shyly, gathers his courage and confesses that after this story is over, he'll need her help with an important matter. The boy with crimson eyes enthusiastically talks about the summer festival, during which firefly butterflies are released into the sky, welcoming the arrival of the warm season. He explains that once, instead of butterflies, lanterns were sent skyward, which is why the holiday was named the Lantern Festival. The fair-haired boy, with an inspired smile, admits that he too has heard legends about this holiday. In the night forest, two people, blinded by delight, release glowing butterflies from a basket, and the sky around them lights up with a soft, magical glow. A lady with long silver hair, looking at the boys in the library, asks how she can help, while they explain that there's a children's performance at the festival. The dark-haired boy, with slight embarrassment, admits that this year, they are the ones playing the main roles in the play. Hearing that Lord Eric is playing the central hero of the play, the woman blushes with pride and tenderness, holding her baby closer. The young lord asks the lady to help with the rehearsal, and she, with genuine enthusiasm, promises to support him in everything. The boy, illuminated by the floral glow of the background, smiles broadly and sincerely thanks her for agreeing. Lady Clarissa, dreaming of Lords Eric and Theo diligently preparing for the play, is already anxious and eagerly awaiting the upcoming performance. Suddenly, a formidable man with graying temples raises his voice, pulling her out of her sweet dreams and demanding attention to the conversation. Realizing she had missed a significant part of the conversation, Clarissa awkwardly presses her fingers to her lips, chiding herself for getting too lost in her dreams. After she finds Lord Teo, the maid informs her that the Grand Duke is calling her to the drawing room, and Clarissa annoyedly realizes that the urgent summons is merely due to her uncle's grumbling. Lord Teo, sitting next to a tense Clarissa, silently listens to her inner desire to immediately shut her uncle up, even though she was told to remain calm under all circumstances. The Grand Duke emphatically demands the immediate return of his magic stone and daughter, reminding them of the agreement that everything must be returned after the contract is completed. With a sly smirk, he clarifies that there's less than a month left on the contract, clearly relishing his imagined victory. Clarissa, stunned by his words, realizes how quickly time has flown, and her heart painfully clenches. She convinces herself that the child's condition has fully stabilized, and as a last resort, they still have a reliable magic stone. Touching the pendant at her chest, the woman draws a difficult conclusion about her own future and prepares for the inevitable separation. Looking aside, Clarissa sadly realizes that by the time of the summer festival, she will no longer be with those she has grown fond of. The boys, hiding by the door, listen to the conversation, and the blonde one, twisting his lips, mentally acknowledges the Duke as he was rumored to be. Eric, pressing his palm to his ear, continues to eavesdrop, and anxiety for Clarissa appears in his red eyes. In the spacious living room, the uncle casually mentions a conversation about Clarissa's marriage, making her exclaim in surprise. Hearing these words, Eric's eyes widen, and his shock turns into a silent protest against the fate imposed on her. The boy stops abruptly at the door, his heart pounding, his fingers clenching with anxiety. William intercepts him, restraining his fervent urge to burst in and reminding him of the possible consequences for the girl. The young man, hunched over with the weight of dark thoughts about what might happen to her next, hears his name being called. The red-eyed boy, with a determined look, offers to do everything possible for Lady Clarissa, a quiet vow in his words. Two small hands meet in a light fist bump, sealing a silent agreement and a shared promise. Eric raises a clenched fist, unwavering determination to protect her at all costs flashing in his eyes. The smiling aristocrat, in a cold tone, informs Clarissa of the upcoming marriage and demands immediate preparations for the wedding. Stunned by the news, the girl jumps up, her eyes widening, and her heart clenches with panic and indignation. Into the hall, where a tense silence reigns, enters a grim man with ruby eyes, who curtly permits the guest to appear. An officer in a blue uniform hastily crosses the luxurious hall, apologizing for the sudden intrusion to the high-ranking individuals. Everyone gathers around a low table, and the captain reports in an undertone that a battle has broken out on the border with the kingdom of Legtus, and 3 detachments of knights have already set out. The Duke listens carefully to the message. His face remains calm, but his voice conveys a dry acceptance of the inevitability of war. Clarissa shudders, realizing that the kingdom of Legtis, where the battle is raging, is the queen's homeland, and anxiety pierces her thoughts. The Duke, in a dark cloak, abruptly stands up, announcing an urgent matter, and hastily leaves the hall with the officer. In the spacious, bright living room remain Clarissa's father, the girl herself, and their fair-haired interlocutor, and the air seems to thin after the Duke's departure. The smiling blonde man clarifies the host's plans, asking if the planned dinner with Lady Clarissa will take place without his lordship's presence. The father, beaming with feigned cordiality, leans towards his daughter and hints that a serious conversation awaits them and their guest. A flicker of satisfaction crosses the man's mind that the Duke left the mansion exactly as he intended, which means the hidden plan will soon be realized. Under the cloudless sky, the majestic mansion remains unprotected, like prey abandoned to its fate. At the hidden carriage by the gates, the cunning aristocrat, with a smile, explains that it is an exquisite gift for the Duke, concealing its true purpose. From inside the inconspicuous carriage, a hand slowly emerges, and the space around fills with a premonition of disaster. In the reddish gloom of the cramped carriage, masked figures with drawn blades lurk, ready to carry out a secret order. The self-satisfied conspirator anticipates how his men will find the magic stone, and the first Prince William, completing the intrigue he started. The fair-haired guest politely asks permission to leave, and the host, hiding his wariness, kindly shows him the way. Clarissa is left almost alone with her father for the first time, becoming wary as she hears footsteps receding and feels the atmosphere change. In the softly lit corridor, the servant shows the way to the restroom, and the guest, holding his stomach, assures him that he will return alone. Smiling as carelessly as before, he announces that he is going to check on the dinner preparations and disappears around the corner. Already at the door, he adds another remark as if in passing, making his interlocutor involuntarily stop. In the shadow of the corridor, a cold satisfaction appears on the blonde man's face as he talks about several so-called cursed rooms in this mansion. The owner of the mansion receives a warning not to open any doors without permission, and, maintaining a polite smile, obediently agrees. The smug aristocrat scoffs at the stories of cursed rooms, confident that no superstitions can affect him. The unfamiliar boy, with a serious expression, first tries to assess the situation and ascertain the identity of the strange guest. The smile on the man's face freezes. He turns sharply, startled by the child's unexpected appearance. On the marble floor, surrounded by a soft glow, stands a small boy with crimson eyes, curiously examining the new acquaintance. The aristocrat's gaze lights up with greedy interest as he realizes that the person before him might be the Duke's son. Their shadows stretch across the wall as the man leans towards the boy, intending to extract the necessary information from him. Guided by the child's words, he finds himself before a massive door, behind which, he believes, Prince William I and the magic stone are hidden. As soon as he crosses the threshold, his foot slips on the floor, and an invisible mechanism activates a trap. Losing his balance, the conspirator falls backward with a scream, and his plan begins to unravel, along with the shoe that flew off his foot. A giant net full of cargo hangs over him, and he frantically scurries across the floor, trying to dodge a deadly blow. In a desperate attempt to escape, he grabs a dangling rope, not realizing that he's thereby triggering a new part of the cunning trap. A stream of thick purple liquid pours down on him from a suspended bucket, and, soaked from head to toe, he realizes he's fallen into one of those cursed rooms. Two teenagers in black cloaks stop in the mansion's corridor, and the blonde one looks on with bewilderment. Little Theo, with shining eyes, joyfully shoots a bright toy cannon, releasing a golden projectile. The projectile, with a deafening whistle, hits a man in a suit, who howls and tumbles backward. Two young conspirators in cloaks, crouched and holding their hands to their stomachs, discuss the accuracy of the shot and Theo's ruthlessness. The fallen count holds his side in bewilderment, wondering where such pain came from. The paralyzing compound that washed over him constricts his muscles, and the man, in a panic, realizes his body no longer obeys him. The hooded children, lurking behind the door, watch his helplessness, while dark magical threads of their next trick already stretch across the floor. Under the influence of this strange energy, the armored knights standing in the hall begin to tremble, as if they are about to come to life. The Count, realizing he was in one of the legendary cursed rooms, looks around in horror and giggles nervously. William smiles predatorily from under his hood, announcing that it's his turn to act. A memory of the master's warning about the mansion's traps flashes in the man's mind, and cold sweat runs down his back. With a swing, the boy launches a flexible whip towards the motionless armor, turning them into the next target of his prolonged game. From the darkness, a monster with red eyes and fangs looms over the butler, who howls hysterically in terror. Two children in black cloaks, still holding magical devices, watch as their victim apparently gives up for good. The exhausted and frightened butler lies face down among overturned objects, with his back and pants torn. The boys, beaming with joy, talk among themselves and praise each other for their successful ghost plan. While the adults discuss the prank, little Theo carelessly pats the defeated butler's leg, as if playing. Coming to his senses, the butler jumps up and, disheveled, furiously attacks the children for their trap. Suddenly, he grabs Theo's collar, pulling the child out of the safe circle and frightening him into numbness. The black-haired boy in the cloak, seeing this, rushes forward in a panic, anxiously shouting his friend's name. The Count presses the sobbing child to him, and his eyes gleam dangerously as he demands the magic stone. The fair-haired Prince William, hidden under a black cloak, stands grimly in the middle of the hall and becomes the main condition for the child's life. The man, sitting on the floor with the captive in his arms, feels triumphant and anticipates the fulfillment of a long-held plan. In his mind, the victorious thought already resonates that both the magic stone and the prince's life are finally under his power. Against the backdrop of emptiness, a person appears with a reminder, and a cold blade slowly approaches the Count's neck. A grown man in a mantle calmly holds a sword to a prisoner, explaining at what point people lose their vigilance. The Duke's scarlet eyes flash with a stern light as he concludes his thought that overconfidence before an imagined victory always turns into defeat. The frightened Count in a gloomy room frantically holds a baby, radiant with delight, feeling icy fear at the Duke's sudden appearance. In the library, among tall shelves, the Duke looms over the stunned conspirators with a child in his arms, reminding them of their duty to go to the border. The Duke, looking away, coolly announces the start of his troops' attack on the invaders of the neighboring kingdom, and the air around them grows heavy. The traitor's gaze widens in horror as he realizes that, from the very beginning, he was merely a pawn in someone's ruthless hand. Several hours earlier, in the brightly lit throne room, advisors discussed the battle that erupted on the border with the kingdom of Legtus. The order to march has already been given. 3 detachments of knights raise the banners of war, and the Duke calmly receives the report. When an unexpected, urgent matter changes his plans, the Duke abruptly leaves the hall, leaving behind an agitated commander. On the parade ground between high walls, he steps out to meet the knights lined up in ranks, and the reddening sky becomes a silent witness to the impending battle. The captain in a blue uniform, kneeling on one knee, announces the start of the campaign on behalf of His Grace the Grand Duke. Another officer, Marvin, bows his head along with his comrades and swears to lead the first squad into the thick of battle. The Duke's voice is firm and cold as he gives the final order, allowing the warriors to unleash their fury. A grim flame flickers in his scarlet eyes, and he promises those who carelessly ignite war and choose the worst plan a reason to bitterly regret their recklessness. Young knights with burning eyes confirm the order in unison, and the air trembles with their determination. The Duke and the commander stand in the sun-drenched courtyard when a messenger approaches them, respectfully addressing the master by his title. At the fountain, 2 men discuss the war, understanding that the enemy attack is merely a diversion, with no real intention to invade. The commander clenches his fist to his chest and notes with slight annoyance that they are not destined to see how the children will prove themselves. A confident smile appears on the lips of the man in the blue uniform as he promises the enemies will know the terror of the Grand Duke's home. In the spacious corridor before the forged gates, advisors converse, while a woman with silver hair listens intently, hidden by the wall. The Duke suddenly turns to her, reminding her of her previous disagreement with the plan, and she turns around with a startled cry. Clarissa nervously clutches the sleeve of her dress, admitting to herself that she doesn't want the children to take on such dangerous roles. She raises her head and, gathering her courage, acknowledges that excessive overprotection will not allow them to grow, formulating her own decision. The Duke, satisfied with her resolve, agrees and announces his intention to conceal them with invisibility magic, suggesting they depart immediately. A girl with silver hair and an elegant dress looks into the distance with surprise and anxiety, anticipating the coming trials. In the dimly lit passage, a servant in a light tailcoat walks past a door, behind which the Duke's silhouette is hidden, and an ominous calm settles in the corridor. Swirls of black magic envelop the corridor, and the Duke and the woman, almost invisible, slip behind the ajar door. The servant anxiously looks around the empty hall, not noticing the translucent figure of the Duke dissolving into the shadows near the column. A boy in a fancy vest walks across the marble floor and curiously addresses an unseen interlocutor. A gray-haired servant leans towards the child with feigned affection, asking questions, while a dark silhouette lurks behind him. Eric, as if playing, raises a finger and begins his answer, smiling innocently. Someone's hand clutches his shoulder with desperate abruptness, demanding to know if he knows where the wanted people are. The woman, hidden in a stream of spells, watches in horror and barely restrains the urge to intervene. Smiling, the servant thanks the boy for the tip and pats his cheek, confident that he has finally found the right place. The boy, lowering his voice, warns him against going into that room, his words sounding ominously serious. Anxiously clutching the pendant on his chest, he explains that the cursed soul of a warrior, whom William mentioned, dwells there. The servant, stretching his lips into a self-satisfied smile, loudly declares that he will gladly help in expelling this soul and hurries away. Eric silently watches him until he disappears behind a column, and a heavy premonition of trouble remains in the air. Eric, clenching his fists and adjusting the clasp with the shining stone, gathers his resolve before an important trial. He notices a dark figure in the depths of the corridor, dissolving into the shimmering haze of magic. In a ruined library, a formidable aristocrat with a sword interrogates a servant, while a boy clutches a child, and two witnesses observe the scene. The gray-haired count, trembling under the blade's edge, looks bewildered and humiliated, not living up to his title as the Northern Shield. The Cold Lord calmly explains that a simple diversionary operation is not worthy of his personal intervention. Dark magic constricts the butler, throwing him to the floor. He writhes in terror and the whispering darkness around him. A maid enters the room and reports that all the assassins hiding in the castle have been caught, causing the bound spy to tremble desperately. The captured assassins sit tied up under the guard of soldiers, and the purple-eyed maid looks at them with cold satisfaction. The servant, drenched in sweat, chokes with fear as darkness squeezes his throat and the world around him fades into a gray haze. The young heir's red eye flashes in the dim light as he confesses that he knew about the conspiracy from the beginning and tolerated it for the sake of irrefutable evidence. The Lord's smile sharpens as he admits he allowed danger to approach, only to give the children real combat experience. The shocked Count whispers about the impossible, looking up at the approaching boots of the Duke, whose shadow blocks his last ray of salvation. The blonde boy with scarlet eyes smiles softly, listing the outrageous transgressions that everyone around them witnessed. Enveloped in swirling darkness, the butler pales and screams, promising to report the incident to the king. On the floor of the ruined library, he writhes in pain and horror, while children and adults silently watch his downfall. The captured assassin in a black cloak is led out of the hall. A maid firmly guides him to the door like a helpless burden. In the library, a stern lord addresses the boy, who flinches, stunned that he has been singled out from everyone. The lord calmly analyzes the mistakes made, noting that changing the plan and involving an unpredictable element was initially a wrong move. The baby, rosy-cheeked and laughing, waves her little hands, embodying that unpredictable element that ruins any calculations. Awkwardly moving magic knights come to mind, their slowness clearly showing poor control over spells and the enemy's potential for escape. Eric nods sheepishly, his shoulders slumping under the weight of the strict but fair criticism. The Duke gravely adds that the plan lacks ingenuity if the goal is to instill genuine terror in the enemy's heart. Realizing what was said, the boys are slightly embarrassed, but still confidently confirm these thoughts. A purple liquid from an overturned bucket spreads across the floor, and someone's voice concludes that, despite all the shortcomings, the result turned out to be generally good. The Count, feeling the soft warmth of children's laughter behind him, unexpectedly notices how a light calmness replaces wariness deep in his soul. Two boys with scarlet eyes look at each other in amazement over the baby's white head, trying to comprehend that the stern adult had indeed allowed himself a fleeting smile. A silver-haired woman with a wary gaze enters the hall, bathed in golden light, her name echoing under the arches, foreshadowing a change in the conversation. The disguised Count, in a cloak, with a sweaty brow and a feverish smile, frantically explains to the noble lady that everything that happened was just a monstrous misunderstanding. Clarissa clenches her fist at the hem of her dress, mentally distancing herself from the familial address and acknowledging to herself that before her now is not her uncle, but Count Nocturnal. Gathering her courage, she looks forward with a firm, clear gaze and announces that she has an important conversation about the incident that has occurred, which can no longer be dismissed. In the gallery, bathed in soft light, a girl with silver hair stops before a tall shadow, her calm posture conveying knowledge of another's secret and readiness to accuse. She raises her head, her icy eyes flashing with determination, and her demand for an admission of guilt cuts through the silence of the luxurious hall like an invisible verdict. The man in the black robe exhales hastily, his face pales, his lips tremble, as if he is trying to justify himself to someone he can no longer deceive. Clarissa flares up in anger, her voice ringing with disbelief, as she sees how this man, feigning weakness, tries to portray himself as a victim. The old man in the cloak is distorted with indignation. He pressures her with words about faith and family, like a whip, trying to bring her back under his former power. The girl's heart clenches, her fingers convulsively grip her dress, as her older brother's words about how family should trust and protect each other surface in her memory. In her mind's eye, his stern but warm voice appears, as if asking her if she would betray what he had taught her since childhood. In the luxurious throne room, a young man bows low before the ruler, taking the blame for his younger brother, while a little girl in a lilac dress watches anxiously from the shadows. She looks at her father's hunched back and doesn't understand why he is apologizing for someone else's misdeed, because the guilty one seems to be a completely different adult. In the library, the older brother kneels before the girl, takes her hands in his, and confesses that this is why he is ready to trust his relative and protect him to the end. He gently strokes her head and promises that if trouble befalls her, he will stand by her side, using all the strength he has. The girl, trembling with overwhelming emotions, embraces him and vows in return to protect him, just as he once promised to protect her. Clarissa winces and exhales heavily, as if a sudden pain or memory pierces her mind. In the vast hall, Clarissa stands alone before the guardian and the maid, listening to the cold verdict of her own worthlessness in the Duke's house. In a dark memory, a man in black with a mad smile assures her that only he and their blood family remain true allies. He presses on her sense of duty for the sake of the family, but Clarissa, lowering her gaze, gathers her courage and prepares to object. Eric acknowledges the importance of family, but emphasizes that its meaning lies in trust and protection, not in blind obedience. His eyes flash as he says, "It's not about blood, but about mutual feelings and chosen connections." Eric accuses the old man of wanting to use Lady Clarissa, exposing his false concern. Clarissa stands behind the boy, stunned by how clearly he articulates what had always remained vague to her. The words that these people are not her family hit her with an icy truth, making her heart tremble. Remembering the day she lost her father and mother, the girl sees new guardians appear in the shining hall, promising to replace her home. She realizes that what she missed most was not them, but the very idea of family that her loved ones once gave her. In a heavy vision, a man with a smile announces that he got rid of her older brother's portrait because he now considers himself her only father. The woman in the green dress, with a mocking smile, confesses her selfishness, coolly disposing of her deceased mother's house and belongings as if they were her own spoils. The girl in the red dress, with an enthusiastic gleam in her eyes, admiringly reaches out to her older sister, eagerly wanting the same privilege, covering her greed with feigned younger sisterly affection. Deep in the water, a girl in a lilac dress slowly drowns, and the words ringing in her head about family being the natural order of things break under the weight of betrayal. Against a dazzling white background, the girl in the same lilac dress stands with a polite, dead smile, understanding that she can only meekly smile while the word family forever turns into a bitter curse for her. The red-eyed boy looks up in confusion, as if seeing for the first time how the invisible chains that long held the silver-haired girl beside him are breaking. Clarissa, lowering her eyelashes, feels a quiet epiphany and believes that she is finally able to break the curse she had called family for so long. The girl with icy blue eyes raises her head and admits to herself that she always felt revulsion towards the man she was obliged to call father. The old man in the black cloak, distorted by shock and anger, realizes that blood kinship no longer gives him power because his niece refuses to consider him family. Clarissa stands tall and firm, declaring that from this day forward, she severs all ties that bound her to these people and their home. The enraged guardian, hiding behind the kingdom's laws, desperately clings to his right over her life, calling her his family, as if that could erase years of pain. The girl presses her lips together and retorts that such laws mean nothing when only violence and indifference hide behind them. The old man, his face twisted in a mad grin, frighteningly whispers about the queen's own support, confident that power is on his side and her protest will be crushed. In the silvery light of the mirror, the silhouette of the queen, mother of the second prince, emerges, and the heroine, astonished, wonders why her authority was suddenly brought into their dispute. William, with calm, almost cold, crimson eyes, questions whether anyone truly expects the queen's protection. The guardian's face distorts with anxiety as he realizes that, with such a turn of events, the queen might turn away from him and withdraw her patronage. The old man, with a nervous smirk, presses Clarissa against the wall with news of her fiancé, who turns out to be a devoted supporter of the queen. In the twilight garden, a dark-haired man, connected to the very pinnacle of royal power, appears as a figure capable of protecting Clarissa's family if she is married to him. The boy in the black vest recoils in indignation, unable to believe that someone would go so far as to use Lady Clarissa as a bargaining chip. Against a white, empty background, a decisive verdict is delivered, declaring the previous engagement void, and the guardian sharply raises his head, unwilling to accept the loss of his trump card. The tall, dark-haired man tightly embraces the stunned Clarissa, and in the air, a new destiny seems to blossom, in which she is to become his wife. Clarissa's face flushes, her eyes widen in shock, and she stammers, unable to comprehend this sudden turn of events. Eric and young William simultaneously straighten up in astonishment, their red eyes shining with shock and delight at the unexpected outcome. The guardian, his face contorted, desperately shouts his disbelief, realizing that his carefully constructed plans are crumbling before his eyes. The blonde servant, with a gentle smile, calmly displays the marriage contract, solidifying the new union and putting a final end to the previous intrigues. Stunned by the man in the cloak, the man shouts indignantly, while the maid coldly pushes him forward through the hall. In the spacious hall, a man in a robe announces that the girl can only be given to another with the permission of someone higher than him, and tension grows between him and the maid with the hooded captive. Guards seize the distraught conspirator and drag him away across the marble floor, while the maid watches with distant relief. In the bright bedroom, a woman with long white hair, rejoicing at the happy ending of events, leans over a smiling child, while nearby, a boy quietly agrees and looks at them from below. The boy with red eyes, recalling the Duke's words about Lady Clarissa's marriage, anxiously wonders if she will truly become that man's bride. When a tall man enters the room and asks for a moment of her time, Clarissa and the boy turn in surprise at his footsteps. The man, with a serious expression, admits that he wishes to speak with Clarissa alone, conveying the importance of the upcoming conversation. He explains that the discussion will be about the future that awaits them and the upcoming wedding, which makes Clarissa and the boy freeze in surprise. Lady Clarissa, blushing with shock and bewilderment, exclaims to herself and almost loses her voice, unable to believe the marriage proposal she just heard. In the luxurious living room, a servant serves 2 cups of tea, while the guest and the host sit opposite each other on blue sofas. The courteous blonde man, with a slight bow, assures the girl of his readiness to help and leaves her alone with the gloomy aristocrat. Under the high library's arches, a tense silence hangs between the men, only rare dust particles shimmering in the sunlight. A man in a dark suit wraps his fingers around a delicate porcelain cup, thoughtfully preparing his companion for an important conversation. Raising the cup to his lips, he calmly states the seriousness of the matter, which requires their careful consideration. Clarissa gasps in astonishment, her heart letting out a silent scream at the thought of a possible marriage proposal. At the massive doors, 3 children and their companion freeze, caught in place by the pitiful cry of a curious boy with a baby in his arms. The noisy trio, who came to eavesdrop on the adults' conversation, huddle together as the eldest frantically tries to silence the youngest. Watching the children's antics at the door, the blonde man with a sly smile notes how the situation is taking a comically intriguing turn. Gathering her courage, the girl in the strict dress rises from the table and anxiously clarifies if they are indeed talking about marriage to her. The red-eyed Duke is momentarily flustered, feeling how a careless phrase turns into an unexpected misunderstanding. In the memory, he tightly embraces the fragile girl, declaring her his wife, only to silence an annoying relative with one sharp gesture. In the quiet of the library, the man explains to the stunned girl that the marriage contract turned out to be a fake and was just hastily shown papers. In a funny insert, the blonde dreamily waves a fake contract, which he carefully keeps in the hope of turning fiction into reality, astonishing the serious young man. Clarissa breathes a sigh of relief, adjusting her collar and recovering after the terrifying misunderstanding that had just been dispelled. She darkens, remembering that without his protection, she could have long ago been tied to a suitor who stands with the queen. The man, lowering his hand to his cup, makes it clear that this dubious alliance is precisely what led to their serious conversation. With arms discreetly crossed, he muses that the true intentions of the queen's supporters remain unknown and dangerous. The girl listens humbly as he speaks of the need to plan her next steps and uncover the identity of the mysterious suitor. On her tired face, gratitude and anxiety emerge, mixed in a short, barely audible agreement. In the moonlit living room, she bows across the table, silently thanking him for intervening in her fate. He calmly raises the cup to his lips and, as if summarizing, says that no matter the outcome, he sees the situation his own way. His unexpected assertion that Clarissa would make a good wife makes her jump from the sofa, stunned by the new possibility. Continuing to sip his tea unhurriedly, the Duke explains his words, recalling how her care for the children made him realize that orphaned Theo and Eric had found support with her. The blonde man remembers how, with the girl's arrival, the restless children unexpectedly became calmer and more obedient. The man admits that he knows almost nothing outside of the battlefield, and his reflection in the saucer looks tired and lonely. In the training hall, he sees himself and a small boy amidst sparkling flashes of magic, imagining how everything could have gone awry without her. The smiling boy makes it clear that without her intervention, his relationship with Eric and the others could have been irrevocably ruined. The man looks softly at the child and imagines how much darker and colder this house would be. The girl, struck by his frankness, realizes that all the new warm atmosphere in the mansion arose thanks to her care. Enveloped in the glow of flowers, he openly expresses his gratitude to her, as if laying all his changed present at her feet. She bashfully presses the cup to her lips, assuring herself that she was only doing the right thing, and yet she feels a quiet, bright happiness. The man, settled on the sofa with a cup, admits that women usually tire him out, but in this case, something strange happened. Clarissa, holding her breath, hears that he feels truly calm and at ease when she is near him. His crimson gaze turns serious as he asks her to stay a little longer because he doesn't want this evening to end. Startled, she almost drops the cup, blushing and realizing how much the relationship between them has changed. The scalding drink spills from the cup, drenching her pale hand and leaving a burning mark on her skin. They find themselves side by side on the soft sofa, and she, hunched over in embarrassment, tries to justify herself to her majestic companion. His palm gently cups her burned hand, and in that touch, there's a silent command to show the wound. Clarissa looks up at him in confusion as he leans intently over her hand, deciding to take care of the damaged skin. She apologizes, feeling guilty before a man of such high title, and he responds with calm confidence, not allowing her to worry. Confusion flashes in her eyes because after his quiet words, her thoughts treacherously return to him, again and again. The Duke's serious gaze and soft voice awaken an unfamiliar excitement in her chest, making her heart beat faster. She frantically tries to convince herself that he's probably not trying to flirt with her, but her flushed cheeks betray a woman touched by attention. He calmly bandages her hand, speaking of wounds as a familiar companion of the battlefield, while she silently gazes at the man for whom pain has become commonplace. Gathering her courage, Clarissa cautiously brings up the topic of his future wife, feeling the unspoken tension thicken between them. As his fingers confidently wrap the bandage around her wrist, he speaks of the restless border and how war might take most of his life from him. In a grim vision, he sees himself as a lone warrior amidst thorny shadows, convinced that no woman would want a husband who is perpetually away on the battlefield. He lowers his gaze and admits to himself that a potential marriage and the birth of children would complicate the issue of inheritance. In his imagination, an image of a boy holding a baby appears, and the thought that Eric might have problems with inheritance squeezes his heart. He continues to bandage her arm and remembers Theo, another child for whose fate he feels responsible. A scene comes to mind where he holds the baby tightly, realizing that he cannot place all the affairs of the Vanderlick family on someone else's shoulders, considering it unfair. His back is enveloped in a white glow as he internally sums things up and decides never to marry. The woman looks at him with wide eyes, struck by the weight and self-sacrifice in his words. In her voice, there is a warm acknowledgement of the value he gives to the people around him, and his face slowly softens from the unexpected praise. Clarissa passionately lists those he cares about, emphasizing that thoughts of home, children, and a future partner reveal him to be a truly thoughtful person. Her gentle smile lights up her face as he admits he'd never seen himself that way before. Her palm rests on his hand, and in this simple touch, gratitude is expressed to the Vanderick family for the kindness they showed her. She sits opposite him, holding his hands in hers, and sincerely speaks of her desire to see everyone in this home happy. Amidst the glow and flowers, she smiles especially tenderly, emphasizing that her wishes for happiness fully extend to him as well. The young man in festive attire freezes amidst the soft glow and flowers, stunned by a sudden realization. The memory of someone's kind words about a person for life surfaces before him as he gazes intently at the woman. His lips tremble with determination as he prepares to voice long-hidden feelings. He holds her hands tightly, and she, bewildered and agitated, gazes into his eyes. Clarissa tremblingly hears him call her name and feels her heart fill with hope. The distance between them shortens, their gazes lock, and a quiet promise is born in their intertwined fingers. The man with ruby eyes, frowning, tries to find the words, stunned by what he has heard. Eric, with a baby in his arms, and his companion recoil in fear and flee from someone's outstretched hand, while the adults turn around in bewilderment. The children, sitting on the cold floor, hug the baby close and awkwardly catch the stern gaze of the older man. The frightened group, clutching the crying child, rushes away headlong, while the adults remain behind, exchanging glances. The fair-haired man, with a guilty smile, tries to diffuse the tension, while his gloomy companion silently seethes inside. The mention of a possible marriage makes the stern lord and the pale maid freeze, as if struck by a sudden blow. The lord, embarrassed, promises to be more careful with his words, and the woman timidly clarifies the purpose of the unexpected conversation. Clarissa, bowing her head low, bids farewell to the master of the house and prepares to leave. She quickly disappears behind the heavy door, while the man remains in the corridor, watching her go. The lord's friend, not understanding his passivity, wonders about their unfinished conversation, but the master remains silent, clenching his fist. The lord, resting his hand on his chin, realizes with annoyance that he has completely forgotten the main reason he called her. Left alone on the blue carpet under the lacy shadow of the stained glass windows, the woman clasps her hands in supplication, entrusting her hope to the silent hall. The woman with silvery hair, pressing her hand to her chest in embarrassment, realizes her hasty escape and ponders the Lord's appeal, despite his family's bad reputation. Out of breath after running around, Eric and William, with the baby, stumble upon her figure at the shining gates and realize their prank has been discovered. Under the woman's watchful eye, the boy with the baby awkwardly makes excuses, while his friend, shifting from foot to foot, tries to explain what's happening. William, gathering his courage, confesses that he wanted to say something important, which completely confuses his comrade. Holding the fair-haired baby, the dark-haired boy listens to the news of their imminent return to the palace and the upcoming separation. In the cold blue light of the corridor, they stand facing each other, understanding that their paths will soon diverge for a time. As Eric holds the infant closer, the woman at the Stargate silently realizes the gravity of what she has just heard. Their conversation is interrupted by her soft footsteps, and the children, turning around, recognize the appearing lady with surprise and relief. The lady, with a gentle smile, gathers their attention, preparing to state her unexpected but warm request. Already in a light house dress, she radiates joyful anticipation and suggests a farewell night of fun. Hearing this idea, the children burst with delight and joyful amazement, as if a door to a small miracle had opened before them. Soon, a whole feast of pies, cakes, and sweets blossoms on the table, promising a long, warm, and carefree night. The woman in the blue dress shyly accepts the boy's delight, admitting that the maids had a hand in preparing the feast. She, slightly lowering her gaze and with a barely noticeable smile, thanks everyone for their support and says that after the incident with her uncle, she finally feels calmer. Clarissa hugs both children, filling the room with quiet happiness and warm gratitude for their help. The older boy, burying his face in her shoulder, freezes with reddened eyes, struck by the power of unexpected tenderness. William, pulling his friend's ear, reminds the woman that they weren't the only ones who helped, and eagerly points to another participant in the events. She and the boy with the golden hair freeze for a moment, struck by whom he is speaking of, as if only now realizing the extent of another's efforts. Clarissa, holding the baby, gently confirms that His Highness also tried very hard, and in her gesture, there is an acknowledgement of all his merits. In the next second, the three of them, the woman and the two boys, merge into one embrace, radiant with laughter, as if the whole world has narrowed to this circle of warmth. Later, the five of them lie on the carpet in a sunlit room, and even the baby's crying sounds like a natural note in their shared serenity. The golden-haired boy, staring at the ceiling, realizes with unexpected seriousness that since his arrival here, his efforts have been truly appreciated for the first time. Clarissa lifts her head, asking again in confusion, her eyes wide as if she's afraid of missing important words. In her memory, the image of the strict Queen Mother surfaces, under whose heavy gaze her only son grew up in the cold shadow of harsh rules. William admits to himself that he is truly happy only when he manages to meet others' expectations. His hand, gripping the railing, trembles with emotion, betraying fear and uncertainty. Clasping the locket to his chest, the boy breathes heavily and barely holds on, overwhelmed by pressure and fatigue. Turning at a rustle, he notices someone in the abandoned garden, and his gaze falls upon a figure stretched out by the table. On the marble, having risen in confusion, sits a fair-haired child servant, whom he instantly recognizes as his rival, the second prince. Standing under the colonnade, the boy in green wonders why this prince is hiding specifically in an abandoned garden. The blue-eyed child, with shoulders sadly slumped, admits that he only comes here to draw because no one scolds him in this place. William, with a bitter smirk, decides that they both live under pressure, but he still isn't going to yield to this quiet rival. He carefully unfolds a sheet of paper and sees in the drawing two boys walking side by side, as if they were equals. In the image, two blonde children, as if older versions of themselves, hold hands and look forward in a soft glow. The younger girl smiles hopefully, confessing that she dreams of one day playing just as carelessly with her older brother. The older boy, looking at the drawing, cannot suppress a tremor in his voice and feels a painful echo in his chest from his brother's simple, sincere wish. In the stuffy, luxurious palace, the boy with golden hair lies on the cold floor and remembers that only Dick saw him not as a crown prince, but simply as a brother. In a sunny garden by a fountain, two fair-haired children sit at a table, and his quiet presence alone fills the prince's heart with peace. Against a backdrop of gloomy darkness, the thought arises that Dick is different, indifferent to the throne and power. He only cares about things that are close to his soul. In the green garden, the prince, holding a sheet of drawings, looks up in bewilderment as an outstretched hand suddenly appears before him. The stone angel figurine ends up in his palms, and the prince realizes that what he desires most is to give this freedom-loving brother a life without shackles. In the soft light, he decides to transform the country into a place where people like his brother can breathe easily and live peacefully. On the terrace, amidst flowers and white columns, the boy with a joyful smile strokes Dick's head, admitting to himself that this is why he dreams of becoming king. Later, sitting on the bed, the dark-haired youth with red eyes awkwardly realizes that what he heard about the prince's dream is like a state secret. In the spacious, bright bedroom, the nanny and two boys lie on the floor next to the baby, and the room's silence fills with serene family warmth. William, shedding his seriousness, laughs so loudly and carelessly that the recent important conversation seems like mere child's play. The nanny, looking at the embarrassed dark-haired Eric and the bewildered baby, unexpectedly feels guilt and a desire to apologize for her own awkwardness. In the tall, almost empty hall, little Prince William thanks the people who came for him, and his family watches him from afar as he walks towards the wide-open doors of the future. Prince William walks down the palace corridor and, turning around, calls Eric's name with slight trepidation. The golden-eyed boy recalls asking the prince once if he was ready to become king, even if it meant fighting his own brother. William, now mature and composed, with a firm expression, confirms that he made his choice clear long ago and has no intention of backing down. He wonders if it mattered whether Eric simply wanted to know the truth or was merely testing his resolve, extending his hand forward as a symbol of invitation. Against a pure white background, two boys stand facing each other, and the prince, with gentle persistence, invites Eric to the palace as a cherished guest. Eric, shocked and agitated, with wide crimson eyes, tries to find the words to respond to this unexpectedly sincere invitation. The little one, gathering courage and feeling nervous, addresses the tall man with his cherished request. The Duke, with a cold but serious gaze, asks the child if he understands the consequences of his choice. The boy, bewildered, nevertheless gathers his courage and confirms his resolve. The man's gaze softens. A warm approval and hidden concern flash within it. The boy, clenching his fists and looking at the floor, admits that he speaks only from his own conviction. The man confidently reminds the child that his future belongs only to himself, and only he can make the decision. The boy's face brightens with sudden understanding, and courage awakens in his chest. The young hero, agitated, admits to himself that he wants to trust this person with all his heart. He promises to watch over him and not let him stray from the path, tightly squeezing the outstretched hand and asking permission to stay by his side. William smiles gratefully, his joy flashing in his crimson eyes, illuminating the hall. The next moment, he embraces his friend impetuously, as if trying to convey all his gratitude and warmth to him. The bewildered black-haired boy protests shyly, but doesn't pull away, blushing and still accepting this unexpected closeness. William, with a radiant smile, hugs his friend so tightly, as if he wants to immediately cement the friendship born between them. The black-haired child, in embarrassment, clenches the edge of his clothing in his fist, accepting the new closeness. In a pink whirlwind of emotions, the black-haired boy with cat ears on his head realizes that his first true friend is standing next to him. The Duke, stepping back, declares before witnesses that he does not intend to oppose Eric's choice. He solemnly swears that their ducal line will become the shield of the crown prince, which leaves the servant and the young prince stunned. Suddenly growing stern, the man warns that this shield will turn against the prince if he proves unworthy of protection. The servant jumps up in a panic, struck by the grim threat in his words. The prince, already in the corridor, acknowledges the seriousness of what was said and prepares to prove whether the House of Vanderlick can become his support. The young heir, with determination in his crimson eyes, promises to show results worthy of the trust placed in him. The courtier, with an impeccably polite demeanor, announces that he has arrived to escort His Highness to the carriage. Clarissa and the boy watch the events unfold, struck by how special the prince seems to them. Already seated in the carriage, the golden-haired prince looks back over his shoulder and, with a warm smile, bids Eric farewell until their next meeting. The residents, beaming with delight, wave their hands and shower the street with confetti, welcoming the esteemed guests. The prince with golden hair smiles gently and with a majestic gesture responds to the crowd's greetings. Three girls, caught in a pink whirlwind of romantic dreams, excitedly discuss seeing Prince William with their own eyes. At the castle entrance, a silver-haired woman and a boy step out onto the porch, as if seeing off an important guest with their gaze. She shares with the boy, in astonishment, the thought that the kind-hearted William is indeed the first prince, and he reacts with a skeptical grimace. A moment later, a warm smile lights up her face, and the red-eyed boy secretly gazes at her, feeling the tension recede. In the carriage, the prince dreamily muses that, since he has such an opportunity, he should see the city and its landscapes for himself. The companion explodes with indignation, begging him to stop such reckless ideas and not tempt fate. Grabbing the prince by the shoulder, he furiously reminds him that without His Highness's protection, he could have died many times already. William, smiling nervously, recalls how he once almost lost his life due to the intrigues of the second prince's faction. In the end, he apologizes guiltily and promises not to rush into danger so thoughtlessly again. The brown-haired man, addressing the commissioner, demands that he, too, prevent such incidents in the future. But the one sitting opposite coolly remarks that the fault is not his at all. The young aristocrat, lowering his gaze and carefully choosing his words, recalls how he himself begged his father for permission to leave home, under the plausible pretext of checking the state of the kingdom, and now reflects on the special commissioner assigned to him. In the spacious throne room, the king, seated on a throne adorned with gilded ornaments, instructs the special commissioner to accompany the heir on the upcoming journey. In the carriage compartment, a young man in a brown suit abruptly jumps up from his seat, astonished that the prince even changed his outfit for this trip. He, not hiding his surprise, gazes intently at his interlocutor and insists that such a decisive step must have a weighty reason. The prince, smiling carelessly and leaning back in his seat, postpones explanations for later, thinking that he first needs to tell his mother everything. The cousin, with restrained anxiety, admits that he is speaking now not as a courtier, but as a relative, and strives to warn the prince about impending difficulties. The young heir, pale and wide-eyed, in a panic imagines his mother's wrath and shudders internally at the thought. In a brightly lit study, a noble lady, after listening to her maid's report, briefly confirms that she understood everything, maintaining outward composure. Her slender fingers slowly glide across the table as she realizes that William is now under the Duke's family's care, and a barely noticeable anxiety rises in her chest. Looking forward with clear but wary eyes, the woman decides that she must hear the whole truth from her son personally before passing judgment on his actions. In a spacious, gleaming study, the crown prince bows at a massive table to his mother, who is engrossed in parchments and court affairs, under the watchful eye of her advisor. The young man, head bowed, expresses his remorse, feeling the cold light from the window and the weight of his own rash act. Royal concubine Beatrice Baritone, William's mother, sits with a quill and scroll, her stern gaze framed by flowers and delicate patterns, emphasizing her high birth. The woman with copper hair smiles dangerously softly, reminding her son of his secret escape and how well she understands the recklessness of that age. The prince and his companion freeze at the door, fumbling for words and feeling beads of sweat appear on their foreheads from the awkwardness. The mother, head slightly bowed, acknowledges that her son is still young and rebelliously hot-headed, but in her voice, there's a hidden weariness from the court's obligations. Sitting at her writing desk, she calmly reminds the boy of his destiny as crown prince and of the heavy crown already hanging over him. The prince, clenching his fists at his cloak, repeats how much he regrets it. His figure in the window light appears lonely and stubbornly upright. Beatrice listens intently as he speaks of his desire to see the true faces of the nobility, her eyes widening slightly with interest. William's memory brings up distorted masks of the courtiers' smiles. He explains that in the heir's appearance, he would only see pretense and lies. With a flash of sincerity, the boy confesses that he only dreamed of a friend he could trust as unconditionally as Basil and his own mother. A warm light of recognition flickers across Beatrice's face, and she mentally pronounces the name of the young man her son chose, Eric. The crown prince, realizing that the eldest son of House Vanderlick stands before him, stammers in confusion, feeling the tension in the hall thicken. Beatrice, lightly tapping the sheet on the table, considers that the support of the ducal house could become a shield for her son and a strong move in the struggle for the throne. Her fingers clench the edge of the paper, and in this barely perceptible pause, a warning emerges. With crimson eyes, darkened by seriousness, she mentally notes that the benefit will last only as long as nothing changes the fragile balance. The boy in the blue uniform freezes in a strip of light, realizing that one mistake can destroy both earned trust and his future. In the quiet room, bathed in soft light, her words are imprinted in her son's memory, like a vow he promises to keep. In another corner of the palace, a baby peacefully snores, clutching a soft toy, as if the whole world for him is narrowed down to this warm dream. Clarissa, in a blue dress, leans over the cradle with a smile, admiring how peacefully the child breathes. Looking at his round cheeks, she remembers their first meeting, when he seemed so tiny and fragile, almost weightless. Now, watching him by the window, the woman thinks with relief that his growth, once stunted by a magical surge, is finally progressing as it should, and only a week remains until the contract ends. She looks at the little one with a soft but anxious smile, mentally saying goodbye and hoping he will manage without her. In another hall, a grim aristocrat with dark eyes explains that the case of his uncle's murder will most likely be hushed up, as if the assassination attempt never even happened. In a luxurious living room, a girl with silvery hair anxiously listens to the news that William's supporters are currently avoiding open conflict with the Queen's faction. A young man with a cold gaze, pondering his next phrase, frowns and continues his reasoning. He stands before the girl, explaining that by helping one person, he inadvertently moves away from the possibility of supporting her. Pale, she bows her head and discreetly thanks him for his frankness, feeling the weight of what was said. The flame in the fireplace flickers, while a thought surfaces in her mind that her uncle's crimes might officially be recognized as usurpation of a noble title. A man, sitting on the sofa with a cold posture, announces that the usurper will be expelled from the nocturnal family, and the title will be returned to its rightful owner. Clarissa's eyes widen in shock when she learns that her stepsister will also be removed from the family registry, and a mixed feeling of guilt and relief rises in her chest. Clenching her fists on her knees, she realizes that she is the one destined to inherit the nocturnal house, and this discovery burns no less fiercely than the fire in the fireplace. In confusion and hope, she wonders if she will truly be able to follow in her parents' footsteps and live up to her new position. In a comically exaggerated scene, the interlocutor grimly reminds her that if she refuses, the family's lands will be confiscated by the crown and the lineage disbanded, and she, in a panic, mentally agrees to accept the title. The Duke smiles gently, assuring her that everything that family owned rightfully belongs to her, and for the first time, a warm concern appears in his eyes. With tears on her eyelashes, the girl slowly raises her eyes, accepting that she must meet her fate with joy, no matter how terrifying it may be for her. In the dazzlingly bright living room, the girl, hunched on the sofa, almost whispers her thanks to the man, still not believing in the favor that has fallen upon her. Leaning her head against the armrest of the chair, she realizes with quiet astonishment that a long-standing, tormenting question has finally found its answer. A ball in the glow of lights comes to mind, where the masked Duke and she, young and timid, walked side by side, and he had to make considerable efforts to settle everything that had happened. Against the cold night sky, the man grimly ponders suspicious details related to the inheritance of the new title. However, looking at the girl sitting opposite him, he hesitates, trying to decide whether to reveal the truth now. A girl with a soft, tired smile presses her hand to her chest, and a thought hovers over her that it's not yet time to hear about all the pitfalls of their deal. Crossing his arms and looking down, the man reminds her that their contract is coming to an end, and a tense pause hangs between them. Then, he sternly instructs her to fulfill her duties as Countess Nocturnal properly, so that the Queen's faction can no longer use her in their intrigues. On another day, she stands by a carved crib near a huge window, allowing the sunlight to wash over her face and new, still unfamiliar thoughts about her role. A warm memory comes alive in her heart. Watching these two children grow has become her greatest joy. Turning to the window, with her back to her interlocutor, she admits to herself that she actually wishes she could ask permission to stay here a little longer. Clenching her fingers on the edge of the crib, she recalls his words about the Countess's duty and anxiously thinks that by continuing to act so childishly, she might prove unworthy of the responsibility placed upon her. With cold determination in her eyes, the girl understands that she will not allow the royal family to seize the nocturnal house, no matter how difficult it may be. She notices the sleeping baby next to a toy and involuntarily softens, remembering for whom she must protect this home. Her fingers gently adjust the bracelet with a shining blue stone on the child's tiny hand, as if bestowing a family blessing upon him. Bluish light streams through the tall hall windows, illuminating it like a sanctuary where only her footsteps and the rustle of her dress are heard. She slowly walks down the empty corridor, as if dissolving into the cold gleam of marble and glass. But inside, she firmly holds on to her decision. Stopping at the training hall's grate, she surprisingly notices a lone child's figure still exercising late at night. Eric, breathing heavily and covered in sweat, stubbornly continues his training, even though fatigue is already trembling in his arms. Clarissa cautiously listens to her own thoughts, wondering why the child is still awake at such a late hour. Pushing open the massive door, she finds the young mentor still training and hears him reluctantly admit that there's been enough practice for today. From her hiding place, she watches as the man warns the boy about possible punishment and scolds him for his excessive zeal, while the boy is saddened that he can't properly use magic yet. In the next shot, the mentor gently explains that he understands his anxiety before his first fight, but asks him not to exhaust himself. Eric, with shining eyes, confesses that he wants to compensate for his body's weakness with the power of magic, desperately clenching his fists to his chest. Hearing his words, the girl is stunned to realize that the child dreams of being useful in the next battle and is already preparing for a real war. Thoughts race through her mind as she realizes the boy is truly going to enter the battlefield, even though in her eyes, he is still a child. Eric beams with delight, and his mentor claps her hands with genuine pride, noting how confidently he already wields his power. Memories of intense training flash one after another, and the mentor observes with quiet astonishment how much young Eric has changed and matured. Clarissa, holding back her sadness, thinks that tomorrow she will leave the Archduke's estate and her student behind. She gently encourages the boy before his last training session, reminding him that today his progress will be assessed by the Archduke himself. Young Eric silently turns away, pressing his lips together, and in his brief agreement, anxiety about parting can be heard. In the spacious hall, the instructor waits for her student by the rack with shields and swords, wondering why he hasn't arrived yet. Growing increasingly worried, she realizes that the appointed time has already come, but the boy still hasn't appeared. When the master of the house approaches her with a baby in his arms and a servant, she confusedly admits that she cannot find Master Eric anywhere. The adults decide to split up and start searching the entire estate, while she, with growing anxiety, goes to inspect the halls. Peeking into a luxurious room, the governess is annoyed to confirm that the pupil is not there either. In the silence of the library, colored by the setting sun, she again does not find the boy and feels her anxiety turn into fear. When the master of the estate and the maid enter the hall, she, clutching her hand to her chest, meets their gaze and silently wonders where Eric could have disappeared to. In the spacious library, the maid with a baby in her arms and a young man listen in confusion to a stern lady inquiring about the search for the missing person. The fair-haired young man reflects on the boy, supposing that the very thought of an imminent separation wounded him. The white-haired woman recalls in dismay that tomorrow the noble Clarissa is to leave this house and return to her own estate. The frightened baby reaches out to the guest, timidly responding to her name. Once in her arms, the child clings to the woman with such tenderness that surprise and involuntary shyness are reflected on her face. With surprised softness in her eyes, the woman holds the boy closer, feeling the warm light of the library wash away her embarrassment. The woman's inner voice clings to the hope that the gloomy Mr. Eric is experiencing the same conflicting feelings as she is. In the garden, between two trees, under the golden light of the sunset, little Eric sits alone by a trunk, his face hidden in his knees. Clarissa finds him in his favorite corner of the garden, looking down with relief and quiet joy, and the boy looks up in surprise. She explains that she came here specifically because it was the place of their very first conversation, and her words gently dispel the shadow on the child's face. Smiling with awkward pride, the woman admits that she could never forget their first meeting, and her laughter fills the garden with lightness. Eric looks away, hiding his embarrassment and bewildered gratitude, while a warm, soothing light shimmers around him. The woman, who is leaving tomorrow, quietly and excitedly asks Eric to talk to her one last time. The boy flushes with resentment and fear of separation, pushing away the hand extended to him. The burst of emotions turns into a magical breakdown, and Eric, with animal ears, looks in panic at the stunned woman. He still touches her hand with a healing spell, and a soft, golden light flashes around their fingers. Clarissa notes with warm pride that his healing magic has become much stronger than when they first met. They intertwine their hands, and the boy confesses how truly dear his unusual power is to him. In the memory, a stern image of adult Eric flashes, next to whom the small apprentice diligently works, striving not to yield to anyone. The boy's eyes widen as the meaning of her words and her acknowledgement of his diligence sink in. Touching her hand, he remembers his past failure and the long hours of training that followed. Sitting on the path at her feet, he confesses that he wanted to be useful and so diligently developed his unique magic. Clarissa listens in surprise, not expecting to hear the true reason for his stubbornness and zeal. Clenching his fists on his knees, the boy admits to himself that he desperately wanted to prove his strength to her and get rid of the stigma of weakness. Eric, tormented by tears and despair, confesses that he only wanted to protect her and be a worthy man. The girl with silver hair, stunned by his confession, barely realizes how deeply he is attached to her. In the water bubbles, a warm memory of a happy family surfaces, a family before whom he always felt his own inadequacy. Gathering his courage, he decides, through his sobs, to change and finally start trying. Unable to control his surging emotions, he rushes into her arms as if she were his only support. Leaning against her chest, he thanks her for everything he found with her, when before he had nothing. He clutches at her clothes, begging her not to leave him, as if his whole world depends on it. Clarissa, bewildered, hugs him tightly, and he continues to tremble and whisper the same plea. Her heart softens, and with tender sadness, she realizes how dear she has become to this boy, just a governess. Into the silence of their embrace breaks the heavy footsteps of an adult man, bringing with him a cold reproach. The woman jumps up and hides the boy behind her back, feeling how fear and embarrassment have tangled in her voice. The strict duke, with an icy gaze, condemns his son for tears and weakness, demanding impeccable masculine fortitude from him. Looking at his father's stern silhouette, the boy lifts his head, and a belated tear still rolls down his cheek. The father places his hand on the boy's head and explains in a stern tone that true strength lies in protecting her, not in stopping tears. The young man, sobbing and wiping his eyes, learns that tomorrow he and his governess will go to the royal palace at the concubine's command. Clarissa freezes in astonishment when she hears that she is to accompany her master on this dangerous and honorable journey. The man, thoughtfully looking towards the palace, reflects on the inheritance of the title and realizes that a visit to the queen is inevitable, although the timing is troubling. The boy, hearing a hint of Queen Dick's insidious plans, tenses up again, feeling a vague fear rise within him. The father admits that he must take important steps related to the future and entrusts Eric with Clarissa's protection during his absence. Eric steels himself, his gaze hardens, and he unhesitatingly accepts the responsibility placed upon him. Their vow sounds simple as they look into each other's eyes, and in that moment, a quiet, mutual trust is born between them. Clarissa watches them with a warm smile, a mix of pride for the boy and a timid hope for the days to come. The concubine's luxurious palace shines in the sun's rays, foreshadowing an encounter with dangerous power and the intrigues of the court world. In the solemn silence of the marble halls, three walk shoulder to shoulder, each with their own fears and hopes, but already bound by a common destiny. In the gleaming throne room, before a high throne, stands the somber Archduke Wandrick, to whom courtiers respectfully address themselves. Against a floral backdrop, young aristocrat Eric and elegant Lady Clarissa, adorned in jewels and silks, step forward as honored guests. Countess Clarissa Nocturnal, radiating restrained warmth, introduces herself for the first time and mentions that she has long held in her memory her son's stories about her interlocutor. In the soft light of the windows, the Archduke and the Countess freeze, facing each other, as if realizing a long separation and unspoken memories. The Countess, straightening her back and slightly inclining her head, addresses her interlocutor as Archduke Al, giving their meeting a touch of personal history. At that very second, his name, sounding like a clap of thunder, astonishes the white-haired lady and the little boy, and the Archduke himself darkens, as if the past has caught up with him in the middle of the hall.